Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 368 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again on a Sunday. Not a fundraiser night, though.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And I have to make sure we make it clear tonight. Tonight is not a Sunday fundraiser. This is the first time ever in the history of this channel that we have not run a fundraiser on a Sunday. However, there is a good reason, because on Friday, we were able to raise $64,000 on that fundraiser, which is, I think, the equivalent of 6 normal Sundays. So I think it's okay. I think it's okay. We moved the Sunday fundraiser this week to Friday in celebration of the year anniversary, so we did it a little bit earlier in the week, so tonight's going to be a normal streaming night. There's going to be no fundraiser attached to this, and we're going to be going over the news like it was Friday, but instead it's Sunday, and the Sunday fundraiser was moved to Friday. Now that I've probably confused everyone by saying that, we are going to be going over the past 24 hours of the news, and it's been really something. But before I even move on from that, I have a little cool story to tell y'all, because last night, when we rounded out this stream, while I usually start yawning and mentally lose it by the end of the stream, somehow, someway, the coffee keeps with me enough that I can't go to sleep right after the stream. So I got on to Hell Let Loose, which is a video game that some of y'all play, and some of you have actually brought up before in the question segment, and I got on there and I started playing the game. So we were on a map called the Battle of Kharkiv, and a guy in the game, because there's a voice chat in the game, said, "Oh, this is just like where the Ukrainians are fighting. They fight like they fought here in real life." And I was like, "No, that happened months ago." So I butted into the voice chat and I said, "No, that was like months ago. They moved on to Bakhmut now." And the guy said, "Oh my god, it's the Enforcer," and he actually watched the show. So I wanted to give him a shout out tonight. I know that sounds really random, but that is the first person I've ever met that watched this channel while playing a game randomly. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And if you are watching tonight, I want you to know that that was incredibly cool. It was fun playing with you. And it was also just really cool talking to a viewer that for some reason, somehow, some way, ended up in the exact same place at the exact same time as I did that early in the morning. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little side story and on into the news. And I thought we would start off with something a little funny today, because we have a lot of Dutch viewers that watch this stream, and I wanted to show y'all something that y'all did today and apparently made the Russian embassy staff tap out within 2.5 hours. It looks like, Matthew, the Dutch are able to pull off a special harassing operation faster and better than the Russians can even pull off a special military operation.
Who would have known?
Who would have known? And they did a really good job with it. You see, over in Europe, and a decent amount of y'all are from Europe, but just in case you're not, they have these little fair organ things that they move around and they play songs that you put into the machine and it plays it. So a Dutch street organist took his street organ and put it in front of the Russian embassy and started playing the Ukrainian anthem, and they only were able to last 2.5 hours worth of the church organ before they called the cops and had this guy move the church organ. So here's a little clip of that. This is a bop. And there goes a cop right there, actually. They got a giant Ukrainian flag on the other side of the street. I gotta say, it's a classy way, in a way, to harass an embassy, but funnily enough, they only lasted 2.5 hours before they called the cops, and the cops had them stop. So it looks like...
I think I like this better than, what they did in London by painting the street in the Ukraine colors. This is more creative.
Honestly, and I gotta say, this is about as Dutch as it gets. Harassing someone is to pull out a fair organ and start playing in front of their embassy. So I gotta give a huge credit to the Dutch. Not only are they keeping it true to what most people think the Dutch are around the world, which is classy and keep it Dutch like that. That's pretty cool. Not only are they doing that, they were able to get the Russian embassy to fold in a matter of 2.5 hours, and that deserves a load of credit. And I think that's the funniest thing ever. They were able to make the Russian embassy fold 10 times quicker than even the most optimistic timetable was for the Russians to conquer all of Ukraine, which was about 3 days. They were able to make a Russian embassy give up in 3 hours.
Interesting.
When the Dutch join, when World War III kicks off, if it ever does, Matthew, the Russians are going to be holed up in a bunker outside of Moscow, and the Dutch are going to say, "Pull out the fair organ," and the Russians are going to go, "No, please, not again." They're going to give up in like an hour or so. But anyways, we're moving on from the Netherlands because also I was checking out Deadwood earlier, just in case y'all are wondering why is the map in Deadwood. I heard something about it and checked it out. But anyways, moving that map to Ukraine and moving on out of our international news because ironically, rather than the Belarusian news, this is the only international news that I put down today. Moving on into Belarus and right outside of Minsk, we've heard something that is absolutely phenomenal and quite wild. If this takes the trophy for anything, it's taking the trophy for the most daring and most successful partisan raid over the course of this entire war. We've seen partisans across all of Russia, Belarus, and occupied parts of Ukraine committing activities that are hindering or completely destroying Russian abilities in one form or another, either burning down entire factories, burning down design bureaus, and other institutions. Today's took the cake. There was nothing that I've ever heard of that got this close, because outside of Minsk, and here's the city of Minsk, just in case y'all have never seen it before, there's a river running through the central area of Minsk. If you go south out of the city, there is a Belarusian Air Force airfield called the Casualty airfield. This is one of Belarus's main airfields in the entirety of their country, and houses some of the most advanced Belarusian aircraft and some Russian aircraft here all at this airfield. Over the past 24 hours, we don't have the exact timetable at this moment, Ukrainian partisans somehow snuck onto the airfield and were able to destroy an Ilyushin-76 AWACS. And so let me show y'all a picture of one of these, and I think it's this right here. It's a Beria A50, which is the variant of the Ilyushin-76 as the AWACS version. They were able to get onto this airfield, plant an explosive, and it blew up, destroying an AWACS. I've never heard of this before. Over the course of the war. This is phenomenal. And we haven't gotten any exact pictures of the damage, but apparently it's being reported across open radio waves that this aircraft has been destroyed. There's an ongoing fire at the airfield, and it appears that, from what we know, Russian media and Belarusian media may be getting orders to either not report on it, or they're going to start reporting on it within the next few hours. So this is the biggest partisan attack, the most successful partisan attack we have ever seen. A huge credit to the partisans who were able to pull this off. And of course, let me get y'all to this link so that we all can see the little bits of information we have. We see another picture of an A50 AWACS right there. This one looks a lot more dingy than the one they had in the picture here. This one looks awful. But moving on into the next picture, you can see a Telegram report talking about the A50 being hit, being blown up on the airfield and on fire. In the next picture, we can also see a Google Maps picture of the airbase. And then in the last one, you can also see an aerial picture of the airfield. And if we zoom in, what kind of aircraft do we see? So we have some Antonov 22s, it appears. Some historical aircraft, Su-24, well, actually that's a modern day aircraft, correction. An Su-17 and a MiG-23. So this looks like historic stuff maybe, and I don't know how the Su-24 made it there. 2 Ilyushin-76s on the satellite image, and then we have some unidentified helicopters. I really can't tell what these are. I'm kind of in the middle of either an Mi-24, I think it is an Mi-24, because that shadow looks a lot like one, but I'm not really sure. So for the large part, a decent amount of helicopters at this airfield. These are certainly Mi-28s. You can tell by the profile. It's very thin, very narrow Mi-28s for sure. But still, moving on from the helicopters that are at this airfield, we can see that Ilyushin-76 were supported here at this airbase, not the AWACS variant, but as far as the ground crews are concerned, an A50 is pretty much the exact same thing as an Ilyushin-76 in terms of the fuel and the parts it may need to keep it at least flying. The AWACS itself is a little bit of a different scenario than a normal Ilyushin, of course, but still, one was destroyed, it's on fire right now, and this is the most successful partisan attack we have ever seen. And so, incredible to know. And also, we just got information from Cliff West that the entirety of the Russian armed forces have only 10 A-50 AWACS aircraft. Only 10 of them. So one of them just got destroyed. 10% of their AWACS forces were destroyed today in a partisan attack.
That's wild.
That is wild. And that's crazy. You know, like some just well-intentioned folks with a decent amount of high explosive were able to make it onto a base and seriously hinder the Russian Air Force from here forward. So incredible to hear. Great to know that they were able to pull that off, and hopefully we'll hear of the Partisans even getting better than this as the war goes on. But y'all are seeing history being made right here. I've never heard of a partisan attack or a partisan raid going this successfully over the course of the entire war, or causing this much damage to the Russian war effort. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from Belarus and on into our location unknowns, because there's not a lot of news to report from the western area of Ukraine, and also not a lot of news to report from Kyiv today, unlike almost every other day. So now it's time for us to move right into our location unknowns, and starting off with our first little clip, we saw a Ukrainian MLRS have an unfortunate malfunction today, where one of the rockets got caught in its tube, and just continued to burn its motor, which caused a little bit of an issue. From what we know, no Ukrainian grad operators were injured or killed in this incident, but it was something to see, and so here's the clip. You see the grad firing right there, and here in a second you'll see something goes wrong right there. You can see that one of them fired, but it didn't actually leave the tube. So now it's just sitting in there, and the rocket motor is continuing to burn as the rest of them are firing. And now when you hear that rocket motor finally pitter out right there, and when you see the cameraman running away, and that's the end of the clip. It's good to know, from what we've been told, that no Ukrainian artillerists were injured and killed in this incident, but still, these MLRSs are sometimes dangerous, and all military equipment, every once in a while, even if it's kept up to the best specs, will malfunction. Luckily, this didn't turn explosive and the rocket exploded inside of its tube, but still, something fairly wild to see, and very crazy to even know it happened, and also to see it on film. But with that, we're now moving on to our next little clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see a Ukrainian drone lifting off, and this thing looks like it's about to go and carpet bomb an entire area, because look how many bomblets are on the bottom of this drone. There it goes, and it's got like 8 bomblets down there in that thing. Goodness. And then the giant thing just slowly buzzing away from the cameraman. This thing is going to be taking out entire platoons before it comes back. And I gotta say, really impressive and great to know that they were able to get this many bomblets on. It's not an R-18, I don't believe, but it's something similar. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little drone copter, which is pretty cool to see, and on into our next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see some Russians trying to run from a drone, but it appears that it didn't really end that well for them. Also, some people are saying that that's the Taiwanese one, but I remember seeing pictures of the proposed Taiwanese drones that were going to be sent, and they actually had a barrel-shaped cradle on the bottom that would rotate the bomblets to the bottom and then drop them. It wasn't like a box cradle like we saw there, but you may be right, and it may be that the Taiwanese design changed in between from when we saw it to when it arrived. But starting off with this clip, this one's a good one. We can hear the usual vlogger music. Hey guys, today I'm gonna go surfing with my friends. Let's have fun. And then it's like go to B-roll surfing footage. But anyways, we're gonna mute that.
Yeah, it's very copyrighted, by the way.
We can see the Russians right there on a berm. The first bomb explodes. And these guys are like, oh, bleh. This guy, he is off to the races. Like, that was the starting gun for him. He went Usain Bolt mode. He's going... The rest of the guys are starting to run. This guy's a little slow. He's like, bleed, I just don't really feel like it. Boom. Another one explodes. He's like, okay, now I feel like it, bleed. And then he starts running with the rest of them. And off they go. It looks like one of them is taking a nap now. We see the drone bomblets smoke floating away now. You see them here in this foxhole. We can see another one explode. And we now see this giant Russian circular trench. Pretty wild to see. We can see another bomb exploding right on top of him. And it looks like they're still just chilling down there. And we see another one dropping, exploding right near one of them. And I think that the drone, well, actually it's dropping another one just for safe measure. And I think it got him. So with that, that's the end of the clip, but we can see the drones once again going out on their missions from the 9th Motorized Infantry Battalion and making sure to try and take out as many Russian forces as they can. The more Russian forces and Russian infantry that are knocked out, the sooner the Ukrainians can conduct incredibly successful offensives, and the sooner the end of the war will come. And so with that, we're now moving on to our next clip, where you see the Ukrainians blew up a Russian anti-drone gun, and this thing, Matthew, is like a video game gun or a gun from a Michael Bay movie. This thing got hit and blew up like a bomb. Like, it wasn't even the drone bomb that did it, it was the anti-drone gun that blew up. So here's the clip. We see them dropping the grenade. There's the anti-drone gun. The grenade explodes. And that anti-drone gun blows up like napalm.
That must be like lithium batteries or something it hit.
Man, don't let Samsung know about this, because they might start putting this inside their phones. And also, you can look at that. You can see the anti-drone gun flying off, and it looks like there's a coil in it, and this thing is red hot just from a second's explosion.
Is that a coil from the gun, or is that like a... It looks like a bomblet of some sort.
No, that is the gun. Watch. It blows up, it comes flying out, and then the shroud comes off, and it's like this giant coil thing, but it's like already piping hot red.
That's wild.
Yeah, that's wild. Left a little bit of a fire behind, and pretty nice to see they were able to take out an anti-drone gun, and apparently the Russians are equipping their soldiers with anti-drone bombs or anti-infantry bombs that they're holding in their hands, because I've never seen an anti-drone gun get blown up before that blew up like that. We've even seen the Russians get hit using anti-drone guns before, and I've never seen any of them explode, so that's kind of wild to see. And also Paddington said, it's just red. Oh, okay. Well, I guess. But anyways, we're now moving on from that clip of Location Unknown News and on into our next one, where we also saw some Ukrainian soldiers taking shelter in a basement from an artillery barrage today that was bombarding them right above their heads. And so here's the clip. We see the soldiers sitting in the basement. We hear the explosions and their concussive force rocking the basement a little bit.
Летят. Собаки в ахуе. Иди сюда. Иди сюда. Заходи. Иди ко мне.
We see that they have a little dog with them. They're trying to call the dog out. And now the dog, hearing the artillery, gets a little scared and peeks his head out. And the barrage going on above their heads is monumentous in size.
Испугался, да? Маленький.
And so with that's the end of the clip, but in the video alone, and we're going to play it again, you can hear how ferocious Russian artillery barrages are. While they're not accurate, the Russians use an exorbitant amount of ammunition in their barrages. And so it makes an unholy sound. It sounds almost as if the entire world is being blown up above one's head. So let's play the clip one more time.
Собака боится. Просто боится.
That's most likely also a grad that's firing. And I feel sorry for that poor dog. He's like, man, this stuff is scary, man.
Long snoot.
Yeah, the long snoot. But still, I feel sorry for that poor dog. All jokes aside, the little thing, well, the big thing is scared as hell. And it's got to be scary for everyone. The troops, of course, are handling it incredibly well, but they're probably scared as well because artillery is a frightening thing from all accounts, all the way back from when artillery was introduced on the battlefield. Artillery is the most terrifying thing that most soldiers ever come up against. From World War I to World War II to even some of the more modern wars like Afghanistan, where artillery wasn't in play by the enemy, but at the same time they would bombard bases with RPGs. Artillery is incredibly scary, no matter what form it comes in. And so that poor dog is just showing what most of those guys are probably feeling deep down as this barrage goes on. But a load of bravery and courage shown by the Ukrainian troops there, as you couldn't even tell that they were worried at all. So with that, we're now moving on to what these troops were able to pull off today in the casualty report. And the numbers came in, and they look pretty decent. Another 660 Russian soldiers killed, another 6 armored personnel carriers destroyed, 7 supply trucks destroyed, bringing that number up to 5,242. 6 tanks were also wiped out, along with 7 artillery pieces and 2 drones. Nothing else in any other category was destroyed today, and sadly, Matthew will hate to hear it, but there were no Bobcat skid steers wiped out.
Oh man, but I will say though, at least the numbers were pretty high in like every other category, like tanks, APVs, artillery. It was still pretty good.
Yeah, the numbers were slightly above average in almost every category, except for the infantry losses, and that's of course compared to the past month of fighting. It is a little low, but compared to the rest of the war outside of the last month, it is still quite high and close to an entire battalion tactical group's worth of forces that were killed outright today, and of course nearly twice or 3 times that number were also wounded. So hopefully the Ukrainians can keep up these kinds of losses being inflicted on the Russians, and I have to say that the supply losses, the supply truck losses, have gotten incredibly high, way higher than we ever thought they could. The Russians entered this war from public numbers with 4,000 trucks being allocated to logistical units, meant to supply the entirety of the Russian armed forces. At this point, they've lost almost 125% of their entire armed forces supply units in terms of trucks. And so I have absolutely no idea where they're finding the new trucks. They may be able to produce those because producing trucks as simple as a Euro 4320 is not that difficult. And I'll show y'all one right here. This is a Euro 4320. This is about as basic as it gets. And unlike other vehicles and equipment like tanks, armored personnel carriers, and such things like that, they have to be equipped with very modern sights that are most likely imported from other countries like France or China, or, well, actually, the Russians were never recorded using Chinese sights, so I'm going to scratch that, go back. French sites, for the most part, and other national sites that mostly came from the West, now being banned from import. Producing modern tanks is going to be incredibly difficult unless they use a dollar store infrared sight like we see on the T-62Ms that were upgraded, but those aren't going to be effective. Producing something like this, however, a Euro 4320, is not going to be that difficult. It's fairly simple, just using a normal internal combustion engine, something we know the Russians can produce without requiring a massive deal of imports from foreign countries, and also the design is, I believe, either all aluminum or all steel on the cab, so that's not that difficult for them either. The Russians have almost an unlimited amount of steel or aluminum, so these things can be produced, and that may be why we're seeing that the losses have passed 125% of their initial logistics forces. Not only that, but they've requisitioned a large amount of civilian vans, buses, and trucks to also help them out with their supply forces, and we've seen a decent amount of those get destroyed on the battlefield, and those are also being counted as supply vehicle losses in our casualty report. So with that in mind, it's very insane to see that that loss has made it that high. It's the only category in the entirety of the war that has surpassed 100%. But still, that is one that we should expect to be passing 100%, considering it's one of the few things the Russians probably still have the ability to produce, although we don't know by how much. So with that, I hope that covers...
And also, Enforcer, I'm being told by several people that they can't read the small print on the losses page. Is there any way to, like, zoom in on that?
I think there is a way. Let me go back real quick and try and get that larger. There we go. So y'all should be able to see that now.
There we go.
Yeah, now that I zoomed in double. Here's the top: 660 troops, 600 personnel carriers, 7 supply trucks, 6 tanks, and then we'll go to the bottom: 7 artillery and 2 drones. Everything else was a 0 today. No anti-aircraft equipment, no MLRSs, no Bobcat skid steers were destroyed or anything similar. But there you go. There was the zoomed in real quick casualty loss. Sorry y'all couldn't see that. I didn't think about that at all for a second, and I'm glad to know that y'all corrected us on that so that way y'all could see it too. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from the casualty report here on February 26th, and we're now moving on into the juice. The straight up juice. The frontline reports. We didn't see anything happen beyond Staromanivka today. The entirety of the southern front was quiet today, along with the Kherson front. Well, actually, there was one thing that happened in the Kherson front, correction. But most of the activity happened north of Svatove and all the way down towards Volodar. So, before we get into this juicy breakdown of what's been going on in the front lines today and how many Russian forces have been lost, and most of the video footage showing these losses, Matthew has been throwing up some incredible polls. We can't even call them juice because the polls are the gin to the news juice, creating an excellent gin and juice. We still don't drink. I don't think we will drink, but it is straight up gin and juice. And so, what do the polls look like, Matthew?
All right, and we have 2 polls to address during our first question segment. But first up, I have something I want to say. I want to wish Mad Machine a happy birthday. I saw him say earlier that it was his birthday, and of course, we got to shout him out. So happy birthday to you, and hopefully, I don't know what time zone it is where you live, but hopefully you've had a good birthday.
Happy birthday to the Mad Machine. That is one Mad Machine, and it's having another birthday. So happy birthday to the Mad Machine. I hope you're having a fun time, and I hope that the stream is adding on to your birthday a little bit. And so with that, I hope that does address the birthday wishes fairly well, Mr. Mad Machine. And with that, we must get on to the polls, Matthew, because you've been throwing up those polls, and everyone in the live chat now is saying, don't throw it, Matthew. So with that, what do we got?
And our first one says, today, Zelenskyy fires Ukraine's commander of joint forces. And why do you think this might be? 59% said it's probably corruption issues. 11% said it's an incompetent commander. 5% said abuse of power. And 25% said unsure or none of the above. Now, notably, Zelenskyy did not note the reason that he was fired. And it's not clear whether or not he's going to make that public at any point. But I would guess that it's probably one of the long line of firings of corrupt things happening in Ukraine, and Zelenskyy is simply continuing to weed it out. And that's probably my best guess, to be straight up on that one. Probably corruption issues. So I'm going to go with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that's probably the reason why is most likely to try and root out corruption. There may be some corrupt dealings going on in the background that we haven't heard about. That, of course, Zelenskyy has been notified of, and so he's removing him from his position to make sure that corruption doesn't continue. That may be the case, but we don't really know enough about it for me to elaborate on it too much. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our second poll says, the Moldovan president says Russia is using saboteurs disguised as civilians to stoke unrest. And what are your thoughts on that? 75% said it is proof of Russia's meddling in Moldova. 7% said unsure. 9% said, does Moldova have real proof of that? And 10% said Russia is just trying to rattle NATO. And on this one, I'm going to say that it is probably proof of Russia's meddling. It's not too far-fetched to think that Russia has agents in Moldova doing its dirty work. I would think that's probably a given. But to what extent they're doing it is probably the part that we really don't know yet, and we'll probably find out in the coming weeks. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say there is probably Russian agents doing some kind of dealings in Moldova. There are Russian agents trying to pull off dealings anywhere and everywhere, kind of like how there are U.S. agents also pulling off dealings anywhere and everywhere we can. So I would say that this is most likely the Russians trying to pull off something in Moldova and also in other parts of the world, and so that may be the case. And so I hope we address that poll fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one. But once again, I got to say this before we move on to the next one. I feel as though the Moldovan Transnistrian conflict most likely will not happen. I'm not going to say it won't happen, but at the same time, there's no way to reinforce those soldiers, and there's no way to supply them. They're entirely on their own right now, and that may be why we've never seen anything kick off in Moldova so far. And in 907 Pike Alaska just said it, 3,000 to 5,000 Russian troops isolated in Transnistria. They're isolated. There's no way to supply them. There's no way they can fly in any kind of support. It'll get shot down. And so there's really no way to help those soldiers out if they did start a conflict, and so they would be screwed over from the start. On the other hand, Moldova could get unlimited support from the West, for example, straight through Romania. So it's a very, very, I guess you could say, tipped in Moldova's favor conflict if it was to ever pop off. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next poll.
All right, and that was our last poll for the first question segment. So we're moving on to our Super Chat questions, and up first, we have a $35 donation from Duncan VR. Who has the animal noises as always. It wouldn't be a Duncan Super Chat without them. He says, Bamuba, a drone with 8 bomblets, Baba, went to Moscow, meow, dropped them on Putin's office, Ba, and blew up his chair, meow. He went 6 foot in the air, Baba, and fell flat on his face, Baba. He lost his nuts. Oh my God. Igor.
Oh man, well, thank you so much for the support, Duncan, in helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, that was the funniest thing that you made Matthew read that last part off on stream. That actually got me for saying, I was like, I think he's gonna filter that, and then he just read it. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Duncan VR, and always coming in with the animal noises, and of course, helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like y'all, this channel would have never been able to keep running, and would have never been able to have such a successful fundraiser like we had on Friday. That was a testament to the strength and the abilities of the Lee Spring Army, and not only that, it was a huge slap in the face to all of the bots that have always come on this channel and said goofy stuff, and will continue to come on this channel and say goofy stuff, and also all of the ne'er-do-wellers out there in the world. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Duncan VR. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is from Specs, who puts in a $20 donation and says, I look forward to the stream every night, and thank you both. Sadly, we lost a Wisconsinite today. Pick a question from the live chat.
Oh, that's unfortunate here. I actually believe that there were a couple of Alabamians that were captured earlier in the war, and while I was at a gun store the other day browsing around, I actually heard someone say that worked at this gun store, that one of their friends was actually going over to Ukraine right now to go and volunteer, because in his words, he was tired of the war and he wanted it to end. So he's going over there to take care of it. And of course, if anyone's coming from Alabama, things will get done. I have no doubt about that. And I'm sure that the Wisconsinite was getting things done as well until he unfortunately gave his life in the defense of Ukraine and the Western world as a whole. So I've got to thank him so much for doing what he did, and I also have to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, so that way we can keep covering the news. And so with that, let's get the live chat.
All right, and this live chat question goes to Pakatang, who says, if NATO embargoed oil from reaching China, what do you think would be China's response?
If NATO embargoed... Reread that question again.
Pakatang says, if NATO embargoed oil from reaching China, what do you think would be China's response?
NATO can't really embargo oil from going to China. And let's see, Chinese oil imports by country. So, the large majority of their oil comes from Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iraq, Oman, Angola, Kuwait, the UAE, and then Brazil. So those are their top suppliers according to worldstopexports.com. So let's go to their website and let's try and get an exact breakdown. And this is in billions. So let's see here. The United States is number 11, only providing 2.3% of their oil. Norway is also supplying 2.5%. So let me add all of these together on my phone, and let's go with Western countries and what percentage of the oil imports do we make up. So let's see, Norway 2.5 plus 2.3, and then let's see here, the United Kingdom plus 1.6, and then that's it. So really, Western countries only make up 6.4% of all of China's crude oil imports. And so if we embargoed the Chinese from getting any oil, we can really only do that from a NATO standpoint, from our alliance standpoint. We can't stop OPEC countries from doing that unless we were to start getting into massive oil shortages here in the West, because if we embargo the Chinese and threaten OPEC, they'll probably just say something along the lines of, well, we'll continue to supply the Chinese, but we're not supplying you instead, since y'all are threatening us, and then we deal with rising oil and gas prices, and that could start to become a bit of an issue. So in this perspective, there's not really a lot we can do. It would be a lot more advantageous, and this will not happen, for OPEC to be the one to embargo the Chinese from receiving any oil imports, because they are the ones that make up the bulk and large majority of all of the oil that the Chinese receive. But at the same time, notice that one of the largest importers of oil to China is the Russian Federation, and that is why that embargo will probably never happen, because Russia, much like Saudi Arabia, has an incredibly large say in the OPEC organization that deals with a lot of the oil trade around the world from the major oil producing countries like Russia and Saudi Arabia, and they'll make sure that nothing like that happens, because it's not going to economically benefit those countries, especially Russia and Saudi Arabia, whatsoever, considering most of their national economies revolve around the export of oil and gas. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well from the standpoint of, is it possible? But moving on to if we could, let's just say that OPEC for some reason did something on their own and we were able to influence them, but the Russians continued to supply the Chinese. The Chinese, being embargoed from oil, would most likely go through some incredibly difficult economic tumult. Considering that most countries do not produce enough domestically to ever run on their own domestic supply alone. This would start to cause a lot of problems for the Chinese, and the Chinese would have to start tapping into their oil reserves, like most countries have, to try and keep their economy running, although it would be not really running as well as it was before. So this would most likely start to force the Chinese to try and find new partners to buy oil from, or to start trying to force the countries that are stopping shipments of oil to them to give them oil again. It would be something similar to that. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well from both perspectives. It's highly unlikely that could happen due to the diplomatic and political situation in a way with who is supplying the Chinese oil. But if it did happen, that would most likely be their two paths of action, one or the other. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. Great one from Pakatang, and thank you so much for supporting that live chat, and I hope we answered it fairly well. And of course, I'm unfortunate to hear about the Wisconsinite that unfortunately died today in Ukraine. And so with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we'll be moving back into the news.
All right, and the last super chat of the very first question segment goes to Miss Disa, who puts in a $20 donation and says, instead of a donation to the fundraiser, here's a money sign to your anything fund and what's happening in Bakhmut offensive.
And thank you so much for the support, Miss Disa, and helping us out. And I wanted to make this clear tonight, since this is a good opportunity. We are not running a Sunday fundraiser today because the Sunday fundraiser that would have run tonight was run on Friday instead. So don't think that we're like opting out of running a Sunday fundraiser. We already ran this week's fundraiser. It's just that it was a couple of days earlier. So I got to thank you so much once again, Miss Disa, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep on running and putting that towards the whatever fund. I don't know what we would use that for. I feel like we're most likely going to put that towards law school. But thank you so much once again for helping out this channel. Now, Matthew, if you could you reread the last part of that super chat to make sure I cover it well?
The last part says, what's happening in the Bakhmut offensive?
So the Bakhmut offensive is a good question, and I believe we're actually going to start, we're going to move out of the question segment right now and just move into the Bakhmut news, so that way we can make it a part of this next news segment. So with that, we're moving on, but keep in mind, Miss Disa, we will be answering the question by going into this news segment right here. We're going to be moving out of the question segment, but I got to thank everyone again for supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running. And also, once again, I want to make sure that y'all know this as best as possible. There is not a Sunday fundraiser running tonight because the Sunday fundraiser was run on Friday instead. Next week, there will be another Sunday fundraiser because they're never stopping until the war is over. So anyways, moving on into Bakhmut to answer Ms. Disa's question and move us directly on into the new news segment, we have to check and see if they've updated the map, because the last I checked, just minutes before the stream started, the Deep State map had not been updated for the 26th, and it appears it still has not been updated for the 26th. And so from what we know today, the front lines are the exact same as they were yesterday. The Russians have not made any advances whatsoever. The Ukrainians are fighting tooth and nail to control the T-0504 highway, moving from Bakhmut to Chasiv Yar, and they're still controlling it, allowing for supplies to be moved into the city. The Russians are not moving whatsoever. They are threatening the western ridge behind the city of Bakhmut, which could lead to a withdrawal from the city, but they haven't been able to move any farther than Yahitne and Berkivka, which shows that the Russians are losing a lot of momentum, and the Ukrainians are ensuring that this defensive battle can continue on as long as possible, inflicting as many losses on the Russians as they can before they eventually withdraw. At this point, I feel like it is a near certainty, seeing how the front line is shaping, that the Ukrainians will withdraw from the city eventually. However, over the course of the second battle of Bakhmut, they've been able to hold the city for nearly 5 to 6 months and inflict tens of thousands of Russian casualties, and also destroy hundreds of Russian vehicles in nearly every category. And so if that's not a winning battle, I don't know what is. The bots will try and make you think that the Ukrainians have lost, Although this is a defensive war from the outset, so you're just trying to bleed the enemy dry until they can't fight the war any longer. So in that term, it's a victory. So with that, we're now moving on behind the lines in Soledar because, you know, everyone hated this word the last time I used it months ago because it got used a little too much, but the Rasputitsa is already back. As a Russian artillerist showed us today on video, somewhere in the Bakhmut area, the land is turning into a literal lake.
Весна пришла. Можно только представить, что сейчас
Now here comes
делать.
the funniest
And why
part.
is it doing this again?
The snow is melting, and since the ground is kind of frozen almost all year round where it really can't absorb water well, it just creates this muddy, slushy stuff on the surface that just sits around until it eventually evaporates. So it is tough. But this is the best part.
У пехоты.
The idiots!
Oh,
They
jeez.
dug a hole and they put the grad in it. So when the water started to form from the melting snow, the grad just got flooded.
А что сейчас делать нам, я вообще в ахуе.
Absolutely terrific. And it's good to know that the Rasputitsa is coming back, because that means that any Russian offensive that supposedly was supposed to be happening a while ago and we haven't seen yet, it's going to have to deal with these kinds of conditions all over the front line, which is impossible to work with. We can largely attribute a lot of Ukraine's success early in the war due to their tenacity in the battles that they found themselves in, and also the weather screwing the Russians over from the onset, because this is the exact same kind of conditions that the Russians began their invasion with last year, and look how well it did them then. So, with that, nice to see that they lost a grad due to flooding. I've never really heard of many grads being lost to the sea, but it looks like that grad's joining the Moskva today, and I don't think anyone can complain too much. So with that, we're moving down into Krasnohora, where we can see some Russians getting hit by drone bomblets again. This time is Flight of the Valkyries, but we have to mute that because if Winston Churchill can be copyrighted, by God, anything can be copyrighted. So we can see the drone trying to line up its bomblets onto the Russians below. And we can see them dropping it in a pair. We can see the Russians running, but of course they run right into the path of the bomblets, they explode, and we can see that they got one of them over here. Oh.
I think he's just in shock. There's no way that shrapnel got him from that distance.
Looks like it got him in the leg. Yeah, I think it got him in the legs.
Man. And they just ran off and left him. Oh,
you
wait,
see-
are they waiting?
Oh, there was another one that got had. And he's out
Wow,
cold.
that shrapnel went out far.
Yeah, he's taking a nap out there for sure. And we see another Russian soldier just run in between the two of them, and he's gone, and the other guy is actually, the guy who was closest to the explosion is actually the one who's better off amongst the two. This guy is just out. He's taking a nap already. This guy is still there a little. But with that, that's the end of the clipping. You can see that the drone bomblets, and of course, probably Magyar's birds, are still doing a very good job in the area of making sure to inflict casualties on the Russians where the Russians can't even see their foe. We're now moving on down into the northern area of Bakhmut City, because if you take a look at this map, you can see that some of the very, very north of the city of Bakhmut has been taken along with Yahidne, and it's been like this for about 2 weeks at this point. We can see up here that fighting has continued amongst the Ukrainian forces and the Russian forces in this area, and it has created an absolute hellscape. This is looking almost just like Marinka or Mariupol earlier in the war. So I'm going to have to mute it here because I don't know what noise that is. I feel like it probably is copyrighted though. And we can see the drone flying around. Pretty daring drone flying, actually. And you can see that the destruction has completely leveled and rendered inoperable any building in the northern area of Bakhmut. All of these buildings will have to be torn down at the end of the war and completely rebuilt if people want to keep living there. And I've got to tell you, Marinka was tough, but that's been an entire year of fighting. The Russians just made it to the northern area of Bakhmut about maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and it's already looking like this. That shows you how ferocious the battle is for the city of Bakhmut and how hard the Russians are trying to take the town, but with almost no success on any given day. We're now moving on from that clip and on into our next one that we also got from the area, somewhere near Yahidne, where we saw Russians getting slammed. When you see the Russians running around in the snow, dashing so snow, and one horse open sleigh. Over the hills we go, laughing all the way. Ha ha ha.
Well, they have a German accent though.
the Ukrainian Schwein, and then they get blown up by a mortar. What they said to go through that. So when you see that they're now running from the house they actually picked to be their little hidey hole, and look, it's like a clown car. Ooh, squad wipe. Good lord, look at that, man. The whole squad came running out of the house right there. You see them all?
Yeah, the whole bunch of them.
Oh my gosh, got them all.
Dang.
Man,
They said that one guy right there.
Except for 3 of them. There's 2 more up at the top, too. But, man, call this Pokemon because the Ukrainians got them all.
Catch them all.
We're going to change it for this purpose. Also, we don't want Nintendo coming down with a cease and desist. But when you see the 3...
Is it Nintendo?
I think it is. I don't know.
Oh.
Miss Decent said squad wipe, news saying... Now we can see another Russian squad moving up into the area. The mortar rounds are still hitting where the other squad was completely wiped out. And we now see that squad running away. They're now running into another destroyed house because, you know, that worked for the other guys. Paul Plonsky said, call them out, call them out. Bearing 24715. Yeah, that starts calling them out on a mortar mission. But anyways, you see the mortar still landing around the new squad that's come in. Some guys are still running across the street down there, we can see. Just running through the ruins and the debris of these houses. And the Ukrainians are blowing these Russians away. Call this a birthday because these Russians are being blown out like candles, and I don't think any of them will be lit again. I guess you could say, Matthew, that because they will not be lit, they're going to be doing the skanky leg. We can also see some Russians going on and getting some flight miles right here. I wonder if they're flying. I wonder if they're flying with Aeroflot. Yeah, I think that guy might be flying with American. Oh
Damn.
man. The mortars are still raining down on these guys. None of them are doing well. But you see a couple of the scragglers. They're still running around. Hey, Ivan, this looks a lot like a snow angel. That is the guy laying on the ground. Oh, Bliet, let's drag this one guy. Bliet, there's no support around. We're going to drag him behind this car, literally just 6 yards away, Bliet. That makes sense, Bliet. Wait a minute, they're dragging him full circle. They're going back to where he came from. Look, we dragged him literally 6 yards away from where he was. He's safe now, Bliet. More mortar rounds are landing. The Russian squad is in complete disorganization. Another one went flying.
That bomb went off and that Russian went running, sprinting toward the bomb. What in the hell?
Something about the Russians, Matthew, they've got to run to where the explosions are happening. They're like moths to a flame like that. They're like, oh, bleed the bomb! And then they got to run over there and jump on it. But that's the end of the clip. And we can see that the Russian forces in the northern area of the town are getting absolutely pounded, obliterated, smacked, whacked. I mean, like, if these guys were opening up an airline, hell, it must be Pan Am, because they are definitely setting new flight records out there. So with that, we're now moving on from this little bit of northern Bakhmut news, and now we're moving on into the center of Bakhmut to its east, where you saw a Ukrainian tank, once again, because the Russians lack any kind of anti-tank weapons, casually rolling up to Russian forces right on top of them, and then blowing them out of the building. So here's the Ukrainian tank, there's the Russian building, let's watch what happens. Ooh! Igor, Bliet, we forgot the RPG. Igor, we forgot the RPG! And then the Ukrainian tank just hits him. Now we see the Ukrainian tank backing up slowly, yet surely, and firing a second round into the building, that one making it further inside. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but you can see that the battle for Bakhmut is continuing on with incredibly heavy Russian losses. We're now going to be moving on from this clip and on into our next one inside the town, because we didn't really know where to locate this one, but we saw Ukrainian infantry continuing on the battle for Bakhmut at one of the intersections in the city, and so here's the clip. You hear them getting out of the building. You see one of the soldiers being dragged back into the basement. And hang on, wait a minute. This is an old clip. It for some reason looked new when I saw it earlier, but this is the clip where they went outside, the artillery exploded near them, and the guy that got dragged back in has shrapnel in his legs. So we've actually seen this before. So we're now going to fast forward a little bit, because it looks like there's some... Yeah, there's actually an additional clip in this, and that's what looked new. Okay, so here we go. Right here, we can actually see a destroyed M113 in Bakhmut that apparently was hit and burned out earlier. This is literally just an amalgamation of random clips. And that right there was a Ukrainian soldier getting wounded. We've seen this clip before. And then this soldier from the 93rd, all of them from the 93rd, went running over there and started giving him first aid and getting him off the field. I mean, you see that right there. And they also took out a Russian BMP-1 in this clip, although that was edited out for some reason. So with that scene in that clip, for some reason it looked new because of the M113 earlier, and then I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, that's why I was included, because we'd never seen that before. But it's literally just a whole bunch of edited clips from over the course of the past month. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the center of Bakhmut and back down towards the south near Opitne, where we saw first-person footage of the combat still going on inside the city.
Приняли бой с пидорами. В подвале несколько село. Ну, подвал разъебашили.
You see the soldier in front of him firing through the opening.
Давай, граната, блядь!
You see one of them throw a grenade. Grenade exploding inside the building.
Пошли, пошли! Давай еще одна, не можно.
We hear the Ukrainians continuing to fire at the Russians. Not hearing a lot of return fire, it seems, so now we're hearing return fire. A machine gun's firing back at them. We now hear the Ukrainians returning fire with their own machine gun. And you see the cameraman whipping out his gun and also firing as well, as he now moves back behind the other soldier and towards the shed. And we hear a large artillery explosion in the distance, and that's the end of the clip, but giving you an idea of what some of the Battle of the Bakhmut in the Opitny area is also looking like. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw a Ukrainian soldier firing an RPG at Russians from his trench. And so, here's the clip. You see him shouldering his RPG, aiming across the wheat field, and firing. You now see him grabbing his next RPG as the Russians start firing wildly in every direction after being hit by an RPG. We hear the Ukrainian so casually singing a song. Aiming his RPG again. And also it looks like he took a lesson in Professor Mortar's class, because that is a mortar.
Oh, yeah, sure is.
Hey, let's give it up to Professor Mortar for teaching the boys how to create improvised RPG warheads. He now fires this one as well. We now see him walking through this iced-over bottom of the trench. That's not water. Actually, it is water in some places, ice in others. Showing you how cold it is. It appears that the AK may have jammed right there. Oh, wait a minute. Our AK fanboys are about to go mental. The AK jams. I thought these things were unjammable.
Man, if only he had an M4.
Man, if only he had an M4. I can tell y'all. I'm going to be trying out that AK. We're going to make a gun review on it in the future. I'm going to be trying out my AK here soon, and I'm going to tell y'all what it was actually like to shoot one as much as I well, as much as I wanted to practically, and then I'll let y'all know what that was like. Was it a good gun? Was it a bad gun? Because I have a pretty decent amount of experience. Matthew can tell you, shot just about everything. So hopefully I'll be able to find that out. But I haven't been able to shoot an AK entirely on my own. The only times I shot those were like 30 rounds on automatic, both an AK-74 and a 47. So didn't really get to shoot it as much as I wanted to. But we now see him firing his AK. And Dirk, you're exactly right. It is a military-grade AK. He should have the civilian-grade AK. It would be better. But we can see the Ukrainian soldier now reloading his AK. Also making sure to keep track of that spare magazine. Magazines are not wastable. We now see him still hanging on to that AK mag and now moving out of the trench after firing both of those magazines till empty.
Обзивається, обзивається.
Здесь дайте яхами пусти.
А рожок пустив тебе чи ні? Я візьму. Обзивається щось берізка, блядь, поняв? Це ще не все, а ще не... Що вам понравилось?
You now see him firing some more. And exit wound 50 cal said they both jam with a proper amount of mud in them. But that's the thing, it takes a lot longer and it's a lot harder to get the proper amount of mud into an M4 or an AR than it is to get it into an AK-47 or an AK-74 because Matthew has an AR, I have an AK, and we sat there for about an hour one day and we looked at both of them, and there are just so many open holes that go right into the internal mechanisms of an AK as compared to an M4 or an AR that it's unbelievable. Like, when you really look at an AK, it's like, it's a miracle of God that this thing ever ran. Like, well, it's not a miracle of God that ever ran. That's a little bit of an overstatement, a little bit of an exaggeration. But it's a miracle of God that this thing somehow doesn't jam off the bat. Matthew can tell you that that thing has more open holes in it than Swiss cheese.
Yeah, it's so open compared to an AR. I just don't understand, like, I mean, I can understand it's really cheap to make, but it doesn't seem like it's real reliable just because of that.
Yeah, you know, we'll make a video on it in the future. We will. I know we will. It's just that I don't really feel like trying to go through the whole effort of cleaning my AK or your M4 because we cover them in mud and then see how they work. I don't think we'll probably do that. That someone has already done that on Forgotten Guns. So if you all want to see the AK-47 versus an AR test, go check that out. It's on Forgotten Weapons. They did that already, and the AK lost by a long shot. Also, C-Face, you probably have a stamped one, not a milled one. Believe it or not, all AKs, all AK-47s, for the most part, were actually milled. I didn't know that. Did you know that, Matthew?
You said all AKs are milled?
No, all AK-47s, almost all of them, except for the original iteration and the last iteration, were milled. So the large majority of AK-47s were actually milled.
Oh, I thought they were stamped.
Well, here's the interesting story about that. The AK-47, as many people would know it, is a milled gun, but the problem is that milled guns take, well, actually that's an AKM, we're about to move on to that in a second, but AK-47s that are milled take a lot longer to produce, and not only that, they're more expensive to produce. And so they had Kalashnikov go back in the late 50s and redesign the AK so that way it could be made out of stamped metal, and that's where we get the AKM, which looks almost identical to the AK-47. It practically is identical to the AK-47, but these are made out of stamped metal. These are the ones that most people think of and talk about when they talk about AK-47s, or actually AKMs. And then AK-74s are just a rechambering, for the most part, of an AKM, still made out of stamped metal, but instead of shooting a 7.62x39 round, they shoot a 5.45x39 round.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's actually kind of weird. And my AK, from what I know, is actually made out of milled parts and not stamped. So it should even be a higher quality than the AKMs and the AK-74s for that reason. But I guess we'll find out. So with that, I hope that addressed that fairly well. It was a good point, though, Cife. Good point. But there is a little bit of an interesting history behind the evolution of the AK through Soviet history. And so with that, we're now moving on from this clip and that AK, and we're now moving on down into the southern flank of the Battle of Bakhmut, near the Klishchiivka area, where we saw some Russians getting blown up on thermal imaging systems. We can see the Russians running around, and we can see that it appears that 2 whole squads have just run headlong into each other right here. You can see one squad coming out of the bushes over here, a second squad running into them, so the 2 just intersect with each other. And so now there's this massive confusion of who's in what squad, so all of them turn around and start running, and then a mortar hits them dead on. And some of them get flight miles, I guess they're flying with Lufthansa today, and it looks like a couple of them are still hanging out. And so with that, that's the end of that clip. But kind of wild to see what kind of confusion's going on in the Klishchiivka area. Watch this, Matthew. Like, this squad's running up. It's time to reinforce the other squad, bleed. These guys come running up. Oh shit, everything's falling apart. Run away. So the other squad just goes, oh, bleed. And then they start following them. Like, they all just turn around and start running with them. And then the mortar just hits them all, and it doesn't even mean anything anyways.
I would like to know what seriously goes through their heads when they're running around the battlefield. Do they really think, or are they just scared, crapless, and they're just running around with their, I can't say that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe they are. I mean, like, I wouldn't doubt it, because the way they do stuff, it's like it makes no sense. Like, their morale is just... It's like the morale of medieval peasantry at the Battle of Agincourt or something. It's like if one peasant near them folds and starts running, the whole army has turned around and started running. Like, there is no morale in the Russian forces. You could see it right there when the other guys start running off the field. They just join them. Like, they don't even ask what's going on. They don't even try and go up there and fix the situation. They're going headlong with those guys right out of the front line too. Kind of wild to see. And so with that, that is all of the video evidence that we got from the Battle of Bakhmut today. Of course, Russian casualties are incredibly high in this area. From what we know, the Battle of Bakhmut still accounts for 2/3 of the amount of soldiers killed across the battlefield today, like it has been for quite a while now. And we think that this is not going to be changing for a while. Also considering that the Russians are now starting to once again try and use armored vehicles to mitigate their infantry casualties and provide support, they're also starting to lose a fairly consistent number of vehicles each and every day. A decent amount of these are in Bakhmut, but those losses are also still being divided up amongst the Volodar battlefield and Bakhmut, and also what appears to be a new armored offensive on a very small scale that is occurring in the area of Avdiivka. But still, the Battle of Bakhmut presses on. The Ukrainian soldiers still hold the city, and it appears that the Russians are incredibly hard-pressed to actually finally take this town. And so we're now going to be moving on from the Battle of Bakhmut and on into the Northeast, because we did that whole entire battle analysis for Mistisa. And so I thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope you enjoyed us addressing how the Battle of Bakhmut's going in depth through the videos, through the frontline analysis and everything, and thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so we're now moving on up into the Northeast and going over the frontline analysis that we haven't gotten to yet tonight. And as we can see, over the past 24 hours, there has not been an update. So the frontline, as far as we know, has not moved whatsoever. So we're moving on into Nizhnya Divanka, where we saw the Ukrainian alligator sniper rifle firing today, and this thing has such a kick that it knocked this guy straight off of his feet. So here's the clip. This thing is cool, by the way. I want one. We can see him aiming it. And look at the silencer on this thing, man.
Yeah.
That is
Is that a silencer or a car muffler?
That is a Heineken tall boy that they put on the front of that thing for a silencer. Goodness.
Damn, son.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
The recoil is the best it ever was. Absolutely incredible. But I gotta say, the kick wasn't as bad as...
well, I can't say that joke. So anyways, what a
How
kick.
much are these? How much is an alligator?
I wonder if there's any domestic versions here in the United States. Alligator rifle. The Snipex. Let's pull up Snipex and let's see if they have anything for sale here in America. So, Snipex.com. There's a website for them. Holy moly, did they just come up with crazy stuff?
Oh.
Let's see
My
here.
goodness, I've never heard of this company.
The Snipex alligator. They call this a repeating rifle. Dude, that thing is nuts. Adopted by the
Oh,
armed
look.
forces.
Yeah,
It's sanctioned by the armed
they're
forces.
flexing.
Oh, look, it comes with a little box.
Oh, you can disassemble the whole thing. The barrel just screws on, I guess.
Wow. The rifle has a safety button. Period.
$100 a round. Is that accurate? Livonia Living said $100 per round.
No, wait a minute. Are you telling me that this is like a custom-made round specifically for this rifle? Because that sounds almost like that kind of price. Also, I don't know what's up on our control board, Matthew, because it looks like our live viewership has turned into a heartbeat with how it's like fluctuating over the past 10 minutes. If you're seeing that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. YouTube's been having issues for the last 2 nights.
Yeah,
And yes, Trister, I did just verbally drool. His gun looks pretty cool.
Wait a minute, hang on. Let me take this off screen because I don't know how much YouTube would like this. But let me see if... Aw. And we can't. We can't. For now, at least. If this thing does make it to a domestic market, though, I know it's going to be way too expensive. But I would seriously have to look at it because these things are incredibly cool. I mean, like, honestly... The kind of, in my opinion, just due to the caliber and the awe of how big this thing alone is, it kind of beats out the Barrett M82.
Yeah, I mean, did we ever find out, like, what the price on it was?
What, a Barrett M82?
No, I mean, the Snipex, the alligator?
Sadly not, because I tried to click the button, and it said, you can't. And I was like, oh, I was like, why? I was like, why not? But look at the round that this thing shoots, man. That is literally an anti-tank round. I don't know if you can see it right there. It's probably very small for the viewers.
I can kind of see it. A Snipex T-Rex. Is that a whole different gun? Dang, look at that round. That is huge. That's bigger than a 50 cal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 14.5 millimeter, and a 50 cal is a 12.7 millimeter. So this thing is considerably larger.
And they're using this for personnel?
Yes, anti-infantry, from what we know.
Jeez.
So, like, if
wouldn't want to get hit with that.
If infantry gets hit by this, man, they're like that meme where you hear, ah, and then they just disappear off the screen. That's what happens. Because I don't think anyone's going to make it out from getting hit with this thing. Because those rounds almost look armor piercing. You could take out a BMP with this thing.
Yeah, that's like some armor piercing, serious looking round right there.
And the gun looks serious too, and I like that little back post that it's got for the buttstock. That's pretty cool looking too.
Yeah, like Trister once said, that's anti-engine block right there. That's made for punching through steel.
It kind of looks like a Lottie anti-tank rifle from the Finns, nearly, except for the magazine on this thing was on top. And I think that this actually fires... Yeah, it's a 20 millimeter. This one's 20 millimeter. So it's bigger than an alligator.
I'll have to come back and watch this video. IMAC versus 20 millimeter anti-tank. That's interesting. I wonder if the IMAC won.
Dude, these Lottie anti-tank rifles were something. And then, of course, the Soviets made like the most jank ghetto-looking one of the Second World War with the PTRD-41. This is their anti-tank rifle.
Yeah, it might work. It says Internet Movie Firearms Database. This was a real gun?
Yes, this was a real gun.
Reminds me of like a more basic version of a Serbu, like a 50 cal.
You know what this thing looks like? It looks like a pipe gun from Fallout 4.
Oh, yeah, it kind of does. I forgot all about Fallout 4.
Dude, this is something you would see on, like, Live Leak, where someone's like, stick around and I'll show you how to make a firearm out of 2 pieces of metal. Like, this thing is just jank as hell. I would not use this. I feel like this thing would blow up in your face. But, you know, it didn't, from what we know. Also, here's someone shooting one. That's what it looks like, trying to shoot it. Really ridiculous. And it was already outclassed by the beginning of the Second World War. It didn't have enough penetration to punch through most tank armor, even from the side, so it was practically useless. But they were everywhere. So then they ended up being used as anti-infantry, and I bet you can imagine how that went. But anyways, we're now going to be moving on from that little side note about the Snipex alligator, and now we're moving on into the area of northern Svatove, where we saw a Russian fail as 2 Russian soldiers tried to run across the street. Well, actually, I'm sorry, that's actually a different clip. This one's the one where we have the French music playing in the background as these guys try and shoot down a drone, and then they get a bomblet dropped on top of them. So here's the clip, and I'll play like 2 seconds of the music so y'all can get a gist of what this might sound like. And so now we're going to mute it, and we can see the Russians trying to shoot down the drone. And now you see the drone just moving over ever so slightly to line up the bomblet, dropping it, is now on the way, and a hole-in-one right in the trench, getting both of them. So it looks like they weren't able to shoot down the drone, and it looks like the drone shot them down. Karma. So with that, we're now moving on from the northern area of northern Svatove, and down on into the area of southern Svatove, where we also saw some Russians slipping on a street. Now this was the video I was thinking about earlier, and this was funny. First off, we can see the milkman had to stop for these Russians crossing the street. So we see the Russians trying to cross, and shoot, and he just smacked his head straight into the pavement. He is out cold. He is literally asleep. He's not like sleeping like we say on this channel. He literally knocked himself unconscious on the street. Nice job. And so with that, we'll say the milkman got a show, and it looks like these guys will not be hanging out much anymore. And so we're now moving on into the next clip. This time, it's not near Svatove, it's further down the line, and halfway in between Svatove and Kremenna, where we saw a Russian soldier getting hit. Well, actually, I'm sorry, 4 Russian soldiers getting hit. Here we can see the 4 Russians. There goes the bomblet. The bomblet explodes in the middle of them. Right there. And I don't know what it is, Matthew, but they all fell the exact same way. It's like a Family Guy death animation.
Jeez.
But got all 4 of them, and then the other 2 guys that were in their own little group, they were spaced out enough that they were able to make it out of there. So, lucky for them, but the other 4 guys, not so lucky. And considering that Russian healthcare isn't the best it can be, I don't think they'll be getting any help beyond where they're at right now. And so we're now moving on.
That's an understatement.
That is an incredible understatement, considering that they still have the hospital beds that Winston Churchill's wife donated to them in Krasnodar. So we're now moving on from the Svatove-Kremenna area and on down. Of course, nothing really happened anywhere on the front lines that we can tell today because the front line was not updated. We're going to refresh this one more time to see. And yeah, not updated at all. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Svatove-Kremenna area and past Bakhmut and on down into the area of Krasnohorivka. And of course, in the Donetsk area, there was no frontline changes that we could report of today because we didn't see any. Also, did Derek change his profile picture to the flag of the Lee Spring Army?
Oh, let's see, Derek? I'm looking through here to see.
I think he did.
I don't see the thing there.
I think he did.
I'll have to take your word for it.
Well, I mean, I guess you will have to. So with that, we're now moving on to the area of Krasnohorivka, where we saw some interesting launches happening today. Someone noted that they were a little weird, and I would largely have to agree, and it seems as though these may be ground-launched small-diameter bombs. So here's the clip. Also, I'm going to have to mute it, but notice that these missiles have no visible streak behind them that we see with normal HIMARS rockets, showing that they are different. But how different? Different enough. And they're launching pretty quickly, too. Now look at those things. They are gone. And so we may be watching some more ground-launched small diameter bombs, although we've never heard about those officially being delivered to Ukraine yet. We're watching those missiles still being launched, in quite a large number, actually.
La 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 la. Ha, Mars.
You and me were off. I thought you were about to do that like at the second time, and then you did it on the third time. But still, nice to see, and hopefully those are ground-launched small-diameter bombs. We're now moving on down into the area of Avdiivka, because while Volodar and Bakhmut had been the major places of Russian casualties, it appears that the Russians are trying to start up a third one, because the third time's the charm, and what better way to spend the holidays than to grind down your army to a nub. So, starting off with our first little picture, we saw a Ukrainian soldier near a captured Russian BMP-1. Well, you see him posing with his snub-nosed AK-74 carbine. which is pretty cool. I believe these things are actually called an AK-74 SU. Yeah, I think it is an SU. So, yeah, actually, I got that right. Look at that, Matthew. I'm so smart. It is the AK-74U, AKS-74U. So, actually, I got it wrong.
I bet that recoil is tough to control on that one.
Man, I bet you it is. I was just thinking about that. Also, this one got that Khyber Pass quality. Look at this thing.
It's a Draco.
Let's see, Khyber Pass guns. Let me show you all some of these so that way I can get a comparison. Like this Martini Henry pistol. Or
oh yeah, that's jank looking. Man, that is jank.
Or this AK thing.
AK thing.
I don't even know what the hell that really is supposed to be. Or this bolt action AK.
Oh, it looks like an AK with the like dust cover or whatever taken off the top of it.
Kind of. Or this Colt 1911 copy from Khyber Pass that actually isn't that bad looking, at least aesthetically. It kind of looks like a 1911 or a Browning high power, although I can't really tell which one it's really supposed to be. Not that bad, though. Or you can get the 4M.
What in the hell?
The 4M16. So yeah, you got that one. But if that isn't good enough for you, you can also get the AK Bullpup.
Oh, it looks like an maybe like an IWI Tavor or something like that, like a copy of it.
Oh hell no, man! That thing is just that's terrible to the next degree. Or everyone, we can even top these. You can get the Sten Mark something.
That came straight from Fallout.
Probably did. I wonder if the Fallout developers went to the Khyber Pass and were like, hey, these could be our guns in our game or something, because a lot of them look like these. And of course, those are some of the best examples, it seems, because a lot of them are just repeats of the same pictures. But wait a minute. Oh, that's just a Lee infield. There's nothing special about that, so we're going to move on. There's the AK Bullpup again. Oh my god, that is horrendous. And what else do we have? We also have this kind of wonky looking stock on a musket. That's just kind of like normal though, especially in like the late 17th century. That kind of was just how they all look, so not really that wild. Let's see, what else is there? Just one more before we go, one more for the road. Can't really find any more. Wait a minute. Okay, that's just a drawing. I thought that was legit. I was about, what the hell? But yeah, there's nothing really left, but you know, what the hell, an STG-44?
That's one gun I've never heard of.
Really? You've never heard of this gun?
No, or at least, is that like some cheap copy of it, or is that the real deal?
I think that's like the real deal.
Yeah, I don't recognize it.
Let's see. In the infamous Tribal Arms Bazaar of Dara, Adamkel, and Khyber. Oh my god.
Huh.
I cannot.
Is that a nice example of an MP44?
Well, yeah, it's an example. That's like saying it's a nice example of an M16. It's an STG-44. How the hell?
But in the Khyber Pass, that could mean a fake.
No, that looks a lot like a real STG-44. Let me pull up a picture for comparison here. So this is an STG-44, which was what some people call the original assault rifle, or the grandfather to the AK, and you can see practically the same.
Interesting.
I think that is. I think what we're
This is
looking
a rabbit hole gone wild right here.
I think what we're looking at here, though, Matthew, in all seriousness, is somehow one of the most sought-after collector's guns from the Second World War in the world, outside of the FG-42, which is more sought-after than this one. Somehow in the hands of some guy who's probably going to sell this to the Taliban, and it's going to get blown away by an Apache just maybe 2 years later with a Hellfire. I cannot believe that we're seeing something like this, because these things sell in the US for like $120,000.
Interesting.
Yeah, so, you know, pretty well. This guy at the Khyber Pass market, he's like, Inshallah, we shall reclaim the Lebensraum.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, man. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from this crazy thing that we saw in the Khyber Pass and on out of that. But still, nice to see that they captured a BMP, because that's where this all started. So moving on to our next clip, we actually saw an entire Russian column getting destroyed near the Avdiivka area as well. And so here's the clip. We see the Russian column moving up right there. You can see them out there in the distance. And now we can see them on fire and burning quite nicely. We now see them burning and churning, of course. And just look at that. Impressive. And a really cool outro on top of that. And so that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see that they were able to wipe out an entire column outside of Avdiivka today. And of course, they've stopped the Russians dead. Ha! Get it? And so with that, we're moving on down out of the area of Avdiivka and on into Donetsk city, because the battle no longer stops at the front line. The Ukrainians are bringing the battle to the Russians in Donetsk city and dropping bomblets on top of them wherever they're finding them, like this clip right here. And so we can see a Russian soldier just making his way down the sidewalk all nonchalantly. And now the bomblet's on its way. And boom. It actually looks like neither of them got seriously injured, because they both went running, although it blew up right behind them. So it looks like that one, unfortunately, didn't get the Russian soldiers, but it still scared them enough to know that there is not even a safe place near the little barracks house that they have in Donetsk. We're now going to be moving on behind that barracks house to a group of Russian soldiers that are somewhere in the dark cold and talking about how they were thrown to the DPR, although they shouldn't have been. So here's the clip, and I'll read the translation for you all down here at the bottom of the screen. Vladimir Volodymyrovich, I appeal to you, mobilized Irkutsk Region Regiment 1439, sent to the DPR from the city of Novosibirsk on December 31st, 2022. We ask you to assist and deal with the illegal and criminal orders of our command. The fact is that we are handed over to the subordination of the 1st Slavic Brigade of the DPR, where of us soldiers of the Territorial Defense in one day formed assault units. I sent to storm the Avdiivsk front line area without any support, artillery, communications, sappers, reconnaissance, to the slaughter. And the direct commandment says that we are all expendable material, and the only chance to return home is to get injured. We do not know the names and ranks of the commanders because they do not tell us. The commanders of the DPR shoot from machine guns and IFVs at our mobilized soldiers because they refuse to go to the assault units. There is no point in appealing to the local military prosecutor's office, since they are completely in cahoots with the command of the 1st Slavic Brigade. We have already been addressed to the soldiers of the 2nd Battalion of the Regiment 1439. At the moment, this battalion is almost completely destroyed. The remains of the people are also distributed to the 1st Slavic Brigade. Due to the current situation, we find ourselves in a hopeless situation since the command is indifferent to our lives. All the commanders are not present at the front line and do not know the real situation at the front, which is why our unit is suffering heavy losses every day. The command has been filling its staff with new mobilized soldiers since November 6th. There is no point in appealing to the local military prosecutors, since they do not tell us. And I just like how we have the original Bliat man back here with his little mask on, just looking up at the camera every once in a while like, oh, Bliat, things are bad, look at Look at him right here at the end, Matty. He looks up and he almost does that original Bliat face. A second, I'll skip forward a little more. Right there. Oh, Bliat. But, oh, man, these guys just realized, Matty, that they're a part of his expendable army.
They just realized that.
They just realized it right now. They're like, our entire unit has been destroyed, and no one's cared about their lives since we've joined the army, and we're wondering what happened. It's like you were in the Russian army. They don't care about your life. They never did. I hate that you realize that now, but that's why you may not be so apt for fighting for them if you actually knew how they treated you people. So with that,
Man, I think they've known that. They just now gotten the courage because they're getting so desperate to speak up, probably.
Man, this is пиздец, блядь. We need new frontline commander, блядь. But anyways, moving on out to Donetsk, and from that bit of a funny situation in a way, we're now going to be going to Marinka today and seeing what it looks like. And it looks a lot like the northern area of Bakhmut. We see a armored personnel carrier moving through the middle of it. Actually, that may be a tank. Actually, those are tanks. I can't tell what kind they are right now to see whose side they're on. They are Russian T-72s. We now see them firing through the opening in these buildings onto the other block across the street. We see another tank firing into the same area from another direction. And you see that the entire town has practically been destroyed. Even the high-rise buildings have been reduced to rubble. And you see them hitting the buildings even further on down, and yet during this entire bit of drone footage, we have very rarely seen any Ukrainian infantry activity. We don't know whose infantry this is, however. This may be Ukrainian infantry, it may be Russian infantry, we're not entirely sure. But when you see Russian tanks firing off machine guns in front of them once again into the buildings. You can see them panning over the destruction once more, covering every single city block. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. But that gives you a bit of an idea of what's going on out there in Marinka and what the battlefield currently looks like. Moving on down to Volodar, however, the front line still has not changed, and the Russians are still taking incredibly high losses. For example, this Russian hit by tank fire. Well, you can see their bunker, and the Ukrainians are about to go, Khabdin Salim, your bunker is gone. Look at that. The smoke billowing out of the bunker. The Russians didn't stand a chance. And I don't know why the hell they would build such a giant, obvious entrance to their bunker facing in the direction that enemy fire would be coming from. That just doesn't make any sense. But of course, the Russians make no sense, and it looks like they got blown away for it. We're not seeing a lot of movement down there, according to the words of Ninja, the Fortnite gamer. I just realized that that was actually almost a direct quote from something he said before, Matthew. But still, great to see that the Ukrainian tank whacked that position and was able to make sure that no Russians came out of it. Meaty thwack, both chuckle. So now we're moving on into Volodar, where we got a video of some Ukrainian soldiers moving around amongst the buildings in the middle of the defense of the city. And so here's the clip.
Да.
When you see the cameraman following the soldier in front of him.
Да, я понял.
See them meeting another soldier who's coming up to him.
Он несет. Цыганская морда.
And we see another soldier coming down that street as well.
Делайте, что работает, смотри, бля. Самое легкое.
We now see the front soldier taking the camera, now becoming the cameraman. And the video ends as soon as he takes the camera. But there was a little bit of a look at what Volodar looks like inside the town right now. And of course you can see that the battle is starting to wear the town down and starting to become mostly destroyed. Moving on into Staromanivka, we also saw 3 Russians get hit on camera here today. You hear that Tarkov music type beat playing as they walk down the road. Hi-ho, it's up. Well, looks like they'll be pushing lilies, as our British viewers say, and hope they have a good night's sleep. And so with that, we're now moving on from Staromanivka, and that's the only news we have to report from there. The Southern Front didn't have anything else occur on it, and now we're moving on down into Kherson, where we saw some destroyed bridging equipment on a road leading up to the Dnipro River. Apparently this was filmed from a Russian car. 1 destroyed bridge. 2 destroyed bridge, please. 3 destroyed bridge, please. 4 destroyed bridge, please. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And once again, gotta say, it's good to know that they lost those bridges. I guess you could say that the Russians are certainly not building bridges during this conflict. And so with that, we're now moving on from the Kherson area, and that is all of the frontline news we've had today. And so without further ado, here's the address from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 368 of the war. Speech. And here we go.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні ми завершуємо цей тиждень сильною дипломатичною подією. Вперше за 32 роки Україну відвідала делегація високого рівня із Саудівської Аравії. Це черговий знак поваги до України, до нашої незламності і міцності, поваги світу. Понеділок лідер Сполучених Штатів Америки в Києві, президент Джо Байден, директорка Міжнародного валютного фонду в Києві. Вівторок голова уряду Італії Джорджа Мелоні в Києві і потужна делегація від Конгресу США, представники республіканської партії теж в Києві. Середа розмова з прем'єр-міністром Британії Ріші Сунаком, перша в історії двосторонніх відносин розмова з президентом Уганди, розмова з президентом Пакистану, розмова з президентом Естонії. Четвер. Прем'єр-міністр Іспанії Санчес у Києві, розмова з президентом Єгипту, візит представників глобальної парламентської мережі «Об'єднані для України». Це 13 парламентів країн Європи та Європарламент. Нарешті, історично вагоме голосування Генасамблеї ООН за нашу резолюцію щодо миру та територіальної цілісності нашої держави. 141 держава за. П'ятниця, річниця незламності. Прем'єр Польщі Моравецький у Києві і «Леопарди» – сучасні бойові танки в Україні. Результат, на який ми працювали багато місяців. Зустріч лідерів держав Великої Сімки і участь України у цьому засіданні. Україна за рік стала традиційним учасником топових міжнародних форматів. Зараз була ще хороша зустріч з міністром закордонних справ Королівства Саудівська Аравія. Перший офіційний візит такого рівня представника цієї держави. Звісно, працюємо над вищим рівнем візитів та відносин, але вже зараз ми нарешті вийшли на взаємодію. І це, до речі, приносить конкретний і чутливий результат для українців, зокрема у тому, що стосується звільнення полонених. Я дякую нашим саудівським партнерам за співпрацю і допомогу. Це 1 тиждень. І це знов посилення нашої держави, наших воїнів, нашої міцності, наших міжнародних позицій. Сьогодні ж зустрівся з представниками нашого українського телебачення, українського телевізійного марафону «Єдині новини» з журналістами, редакторами, продюсерами. Дуже змістовна онлайн-зустріч. Привід для зустрічі – річниця марафону. вдячність усім, хто працює у ньому. Але зміст був значно ширшим. Ми говорили про посилення інформаційної роботи нашої держави і суспільства. Особливо це стосується тих частин світу, де наша дипломатія довгими десятиліттями з різних причин не була представлена. І зараз ми маємо зробити так, щоб інформаційно та дипломатично ми були максимально потужними, щоб позиція України була абсолютно зрозумілою в усіх частинах світу. Це важливо в нашій роботі по забезпеченню деокупації території, наших активних дій, які ми плануємо. Чим більше знають про Україну, чим більше розуміють Україну, тим більше підтримують Україну і тим ближче стає наша перемога. Я ще раз дякую усім, кожному і кожній, хто працює в марафоні, хто створює цей інформаційний фундамент нашого національного єднання. Дякую за відданість українській справі, за щире бажання шукати і розвивати формати, які посилять марафон, а отже і Україну. І дякую за постійний пошук нових методів роботи для тих, хто зараз на тимчасово окупованих територіях України, за пошук нових шляхів доступу до наших людей і в Донецьку, і в Луганську, і на півдні держави, і в Криму. Дуже важливо, що Росії не вдалося закрити інформаційно наших людей і нашу землю на тій частині України, де поки що є триколор терористів. Ми маємо зробити і зробимо все, щоб доступ наших людей до правдивої інформації ставав більше. Сьогодні, 26 лютого, ми відзначаємо День спротиву окупації Криму і Севастополя. І саме сьогодні така розмова особливо важлива. Розмова про те, щоб інформаційно та всіма іншими шляхами постійно забезпечувати розуміння, що Україна нікого не покине, нікого не залишить ворогу. Всіх своїх і все своє ми повернемо з російської неволі. В 2014 році російська агресія розпочалась саме з захоплення Криму. Логічно, що з звільненням Криму ми поставимо історичну крапку на будь-яких намаганнях Росії ламати життя українцям та усім народам Європи, Азії, на підкорення яких Кремль колись претендував. Міжнародне право переможе саме тут, на землях України, на Донбасі, в Приазові, на Херсонщині і в Криму. Я дякую усім, хто наближає цю перемогу. Я дякую усім, хто допомагає нашим людям на тимчасово окупованій території. Слава кожному і кожній, хто зараз в бою. До речі, особливо вдячний сьогодні нашим хлопцям зі 110-ї окремої механізованої бригади, які збили черговий ворожий літак під Авдіївкою. Слава усім нашим героям спротиву на тимчасово окупованій території. Вся Україна буде вільною. І ще одне. Сьогодні є нові рішення нашої держави щодо санкцій проти тих, хто причетний або допомагає Росії вести війну і знищувати життя та людей. Підписав 3 укази для реалізації рішень РНБО проти тих росіян, хто причетний до викрадення українських дітей, проти тих представників російської сфери спорту, які намагаються поставити спорт на службу агресії, і проти тих, хто допомагає тримати структури найманців Росії для війни проти України і усіх вільних людей. Тиск України продовжиться, тиск світу на державу-терориста продовжиться. Слава Україні!
And so with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 368 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And of course, that wraps up our news summary for the night. We're about to be moving on into our question segment where we're going to address all of the super chats that have been sent in tonight and as many live chats as possible, and also all the polls that have been run in between the last question segment and this one. But before we get to that, I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching tonight and finding this channel to be a go-to source of news on the war in Ukraine. And of course, while we didn't run a Sunday fundraiser tonight, helping the Friday fundraiser get to $64,240, because if it wasn't for the Friday fundraiser, a Sunday fundraiser would have been run, but we moved the Sunday fundraiser forward to Friday. So with that, thank you all so much once again for watching, and we are now moving on into the question segment. So with that, Matthew, what are the polls?
All right, so for our final question segment, we have 5 polls to address. And the very first one we're going to cover is the one that's still running, which says Germany says to judge China, quote unquote, by its actions and not words as it calls for Ukraine peace talks. And what are your thoughts? 79% said I agree. Be very skeptical of China. 6% said unsure. 9% said, actions can be deceiving. And 6% said, I disagree completely. And like we've discussed in the past with Ukraine Matters, also me and the Enforcer have said it as well, to be very skeptical of China's peace plan, if you can even call it a peace plan, because I'm not really sure why China would want peace, like we've been saying. So I agree with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to agree with the majority. It's important to be very skeptical about the Chinese, considering that they're in a different sphere of influence, and they probably have their own plays in mind that may not be lining up with ours. And so it's very important to be skeptical about the Chinese government and China as a nation and what they're doing, because what they're saying is probably not going to be lining up with what they're doing, because they're saying both sides at different times, and we don't really see them doing anything right now. So George Tincher, man, he said it, don't trust China, China is asshole. You remember that video? Oh man, I saw that and I was like, I have to say that one. But with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the first poll that I ran says, today, Saudi foreign minister takes a visit to Kyiv, announcing a $400 million aid package, and what are your thoughts? 67% said they want Ukraine's favor post-war, 19% said unsure, and 14% said they were being altruistic. And I think we're seeing a lot of countries start to vie for Ukraine's post-war favor. I think folks kind of see the direction it's going to go. Ukraine will eventually prevail, and they're going to be very likely a hotbed of investment after the war is over, and probably a very strong trading partner for whichever country they buddy up the closest to. So I think the Saudis are trying to jump in there and put their name in the hat. But that's what I think. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that we're most likely seeing everyone, like you said, vying to try and get into the Ukrainian economy after this war, because it seems as though, from what we're seeing, a lot of countries are starting to see that the Ukrainians could potentially be a huge economic boon for both of them and the Ukrainians, and trade with them would be incredibly beneficial. And that's why we're seeing a lot of countries stepping up now that didn't throughout the entire first year of the war, hoping that when this war ends, and hopefully that'll be soon for their benefit, they'll be able to hop in on this lucrative Ukrainian trade and rebuilding efforts. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And also, Bishaler, hopefully I pronounced your name correctly, said lucrative rebuilding contracts. I would largely agree with that. That's probably what a lot of people are trying to get involved with. And not only that, not only is the rebuilding going to be lucrative for most countries, the economy that Ukraine is going to have after the rebuilding is probably going to be fairly successful as well. And so a lot of people are going to be trying to get involved in that business, because it'll be a fairly good money-making business, to say the least. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one says, the CIA says that Russia offered to help Iran's missile program in exchange for military aid. And what are your thoughts? 84%, which is the overwhelming majority, said Russia is very, very desperate for help. 2% said unsure. 11% said they want strong Iran partnership. And 3% said none of the above. Now, I'm going to lean toward Russia is very desperate. I don't really think they necessarily want a strong Iran partnership. But at this point, Moscow will reach out to literally anyone they can to try to get help from any direction, because they're so desperate. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would think that they probably don't really care about the Iranians. The only reason they've ever cared about the Iranians was because back in the day when the Shah was overthrown, the Iranians could possibly serve to help them get some extra oil out of the Middle East, and also start whatever they wanted to down there, or at least start to destabilize the Middle East, which would be to their benefit as well. So that's the only reason they've ever really cared. I don't really think they care about the Iranians and trying to make an alliance with them. I think what they're really caring about is trying to get those weapons and try and get some kind of short-term support from the Iranians. So with that, I hope that
that's pretty messed up that they're willing to help them with their missile program just for some support. That doesn't seem like an even trade, just looking at it from a neutral perspective.
Yeah, they're like, please help us. they're like a certain person, Matthew, way back in the day, about, I don't know, 7 years ago. Please clap.
Oh,
That's what the
Poor
Russians
old
are at
Jeb.
right now. Yeah, poor guy. But you can't say much about it beyond that. But still, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And also, a lot of y'all are talking about the Saudis hate Iran. Yes, they do. The Saudis actually view the Iranians as kind of their rival, which is funny because they're only divided by the Persian Gulf and Iraq. But moving on from that, Middle Eastern politics is Middle Eastern diplomacy, not really politics, because politics is a domestic thing within a single country. Diplomacy is spanning across them all. Middle Eastern diplomacy is incredibly interesting with how it's conducted, who's viewing what, and why it turned into the way it is today. And that's a massive rabbit hole that one could go into because, a lot of y'all may actually be old enough to remember that the Middle East was an incredibly stable place back during the 1950s, the 60s, and the 70s, and leading on into the middle of the 80s, it was largely stable. There wasn't really much going on in the Middle East except for wars with Israel from its neighbors. And then, of course, the Iraq-Iran war started, I believe, sometime in the late 70s and went on into the 80s. So that was when we started to see the first, I guess you could say, instances of the Middle East becoming somewhat destabilized. And funnily enough, that's mostly because of the Pakistanis funding massive amounts of terror groups to get back at the Indians, because the Indians and the Pakistanis hate each other. So the Pakistanis funded all of these radical militant groups, both radical communists and also radical Islamic groups, so that way they would go into India and they would start committing terrorist attacks. But what they didn't think about is that they would spread, and they also started to fund the radical groups in Afghanistan, because funnily enough, in the Soviet-Afghan war, it wasn't the United States directly giving the Afghanis their tech and equipment like Stinger man pads and things like that. We would give that equipment to the Pakistanis, and the Pakistanis would give that equipment to the Afghans, and then they would also take some of that equipment and not give it to the Afghans, and then give it to militant terrorist groups, so that way they would destabilize India, and then they just kept on spreading. And so we ended up having radical militants in Syria, Iraq. You could kind of say that's what led to the Arab Spring a little bit, is due to the kind of Cold War going on between India and Pakistan attempting to destabilize India as well as Afghanistan by funding terrorist groups. So kind of a little interesting with that. Also the Syrians did that as well, but that's a whole other thing. Like, really, it would take like hours to explain in great detail and even make it make any sense at all, like what's happened in the Middle East over the past several decades and why it looks the way it does today, because, just several decades ago, it didn't look at all like this. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well and gives a little bit of background as to why things are the way they are down there. But with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, in reference to firearms, what do you consider yourself, and be honest? It looks like 34% said, I'll use what works, no snobbery. 27% said unsure, undecided, no guns for me. 19% said I'm a gun snob / enthusiast, and 20% said it depends on the situation. Now, this was something I just threw up out of like funniness and also curiosity. I'm personally the type that will use something depending on the situation. If it's a calm, like normal situation, I'll probably be a gun snob enthusiast if I'm being straight up. But if it's a situation where like your life depends on it, I don't care. I'll use anything. But Enforcer, what say you?
A gun snob. I'm a gun snob. I like collectible guns. I like old guns. Like, I don't even like my thing. A lot of people always go, and this is something that kind of I kind of find weird. When crap hits the fan, I'm gonna have my scar or something like that. When stuff hits the fan, that would be very rare, and it probably won't happen through most people's lifetimes because stuff has only hit the fan once in the United States. So I wouldn't really care. I don't really count on my guns carrying me through anything because the chances of anything happening is incredibly low. So I get guns, and I'm a snob about them because I just like to collect them because they're historical or neat, or because they're fun. And so I'm actually a bit of a gun snob. I would have to fall within that category because that's just what I do. So with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well. And also, Tom Exman said next Sunday is fundraiser. This week's fundraiser, just to clarify it again, just in case anyone is wondering why there isn't a fundraiser being run tonight. This week's fundraiser was run on Friday. So let me go and grab it real quick, so that way I can remind everyone that a weekly fundraiser did run. It's just that it didn't run today. So let me go to the live, and let me go over here. So this stream right here was our weekly fundraiser, and you can see that it got up to $64,258.00, which it appears that it may have raised a couple extra dollars, because I don't remember it being on 0 cents. I remember it being 34 cents. But anyways, we did raise an incredible amount this week, more than we ever have on any other fundraiser, and that was our Sunday fundraiser, but it was on Friday, so we didn't have a Sunday fundraiser this week. We'll be having one next week, though. We'll be going back to our normal fundraising schedule of it being Sunday instead of Friday next week, and it'll keep on doing that until the end of the war, until something big or special happens again, like the 2-year anniversary, if we ever got that far. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, just in case if anyone's wondering why there is no fundraiser running tonight. And so with that, we are on to the next one. I had to bring that up because we have seen a few people coming in going, "What? No Sunday fundraiser?" And I know this is how it works. We run the Friday fundraiser, blow it out of the park. Someone shows up today, doesn't see a fundraiser, so then they start going around going, "Oh, the enforcer, he doesn't care about the people of Ukraine." Although we did an amazing fundraiser on Friday, and that's why we're not running one today. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. In our last poll before we get to our super chat and live chat questions says, a White House official will not say whether the U.S. will support Ukraine retaking Crimea right now at this point. And what are your thoughts? 42% said the U.S. is being too cautious again. 25% said the U.S. wants to reserve judgment. 25% also said it's not our place to say that. And 9% said unsure. And I will say on this one that the U.S. has gotten very, very deep into this Ukrainian conflict. So I wouldn't say it's not our place to say it. And in fact, Ukraine wants to retake Crimea at some point. So it would be natural to support our ally at this point. And I would say that we're being a little too cautious. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that. I think we're being a little bit too cautious on that. I believe that the Ukrainians should retake Crimea. That is, of course, supporting American strategic interests as well, as if they do retake Crimea. So I would say yes. I think that we should definitely support the Ukrainians in retaking Crimea. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And with that being said, we're on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a $40 donation from Gary Robbins, who says, I stopped watching for 2 weeks after seeing the humiliation of Russian prisoners, including a Russian with a toilet seat around his head. This reminds me when Abu Ghraib humiliation really set the U.S. back. Please stop this.
Wait, can you reread that one again real quick?
Dang, that was a long one. Gary says, I stopped watching for 2 weeks after seeing the humiliation of Russian prisoners, including a Russian with a toilet seat around his head. This reminds me of Abu Ghraib. Humiliation really set the U.S. back. Please stop this.
Well, I thank you for the support, Gary. And I show clips from the war. I really can't control, for the most part, what clips they are. As long as they're showable, we show them. The only things we kind of filter out are when people are getting blown up visibly and graphically on stream. So we show everything. And right before we showed that, we were watching a Ukrainian soldier dancing in front of Russian soldiers while they were shooting around him and forcing him to dance. So it kind of just comes with what it is. And the reason why we showed that is because the Ukrainians took on prisoners. And we had to show that. I can't really control that they put the toilet things around their heads, and I also can't control that the Russians were shooting at the Ukrainian soldier and forcing him to dance. We're just showing the war as it is, and I can't really control that. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Jose Ruano, who puts in a 20 and says, Enforcer, talking about music and your singing skills, do you like Bob Seger music? And if so, which is your favorite song? Slava Ukraine and hit the like button, LSA.
I would say Bob Seger. I don't think I've ever heard of Bob Seger. In fact, I don't think I've heard.
Roasting.
Yeah, here we go. I haven't actually heard a lot of any singers for that matter to really know. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on really even answering that at all. But Thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. But sadly, I'm woefully unequipped to really address that question at all because I don't really listen to a lot of singers. Well, at least modern ones. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And believe it or not, I'm not really up to speed on pop culture, but I actually have heard of Bob Seger, believe it or not. I couldn't really name a song, but I know who he is. So I have to say the enforcer's alone on this one. So roast him, not me. But that's just a joke, by the way. But anyways, our next super chat is from Panama Floyd, who generously puts in a $50 donation and says, agreed with Ukraine recovering Crimea. Please look at Sevastopol. Only Ukrainian I know says it was beautiful. And take a question from the chat.
And I thank you for the support, Panama Floyd. And I think it's incredibly crucial that the United States supports Ukraine in attempting to retake Crimea. I think that's incredibly important to lay out to the Ukrainians that is something that we support them in doing, because that supports our strategic interests. And so on a humanitarian perspective, if you're a humanitarian, we support the Ukrainians because we want them to win, and it's an illegal invasion, and we don't like that. If you're more of a strategist and you're looking for America to get something out of this, the best thing we could get out of this is having the Russian Black Sea Fleet booted from Crimea and the Ukrainians controlling the Crimean Peninsula. That would be the best thing the United States could get out of it from a strategic perspective. And so on that end, that perspective, it is incredibly important for the United States to ensure that Ukraine retakes Crimea, unless it becomes completely impossible, because that is within our strategic interest and that benefits us, so we have to support that for that reason. So I got to thank you for the support, Monsieur Panama Floyd, for agreeing with us. And also, let's take a look at Sevastopol if we can. Looks like my map just froze, and now we're down in Sevastopol. And did you know, Matthew, that the port city of Sevastopol, in terms of its like latitude in the world, if that's the correct one, I think it is latitude or parallel, is at the exact same parallel as the farthest northern area of Minnesota.
That's interesting. No, I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah, it's wild when you think about it. But moving on down here, let's take a look at the city of Sevastopol. And let's see what it looks like. So, not a lot of pictures, but here's one. And this was taken in March 2020, and this is what Sevastopol looks like.
This is before the war.
No, this is after the war. Well, this is before the war in 2022, but this is during Russian occupation.
That surprisingly doesn't look that bad.
It doesn't look that bad. But at the same time, it does look a little weird. I don't know. Like, the road looks like it's made out of gravel.
It looks like something's up, but if you didn't know what was going on, you really couldn't tell.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, it kind of looks like a normal town. Not really a lot exceptional to say about it. It doesn't look that bad. But I don't know what's up with, like, the gravel road. That's kind of weird. But moving on from that, it doesn't look that bad from what we can tell. It looks like a pretty nice place. Let's see if we can drop down... wait a minute, we can. Let's drop down in this park and see what the park looks like. So this was in November of 2017. We can see that they've rebuilt the statue of Lenin. They like Lenin. And also the park itself. And we can see a helicopter or something, a bird, I think, flying.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Could that be a flying saucer? Stay tuned to find out.
Could that be aliens? Aliens built the Black Sea Fleet. We'll be back.
But
damn, son, where'd you find this?
Looking like a double-wide surprise.
But
this is why you walk with your boys.
Walk with your boys.
But moving on from that, it doesn't look like that bad of a place, and I would definitely drop down there and take a visit if it was Ukrainian. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Panama Floyd, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we addressed that fairly well. And also, we will make sure to take a question from the live chat. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. And also, like Bishaler said, scramble the F-22s quick. Shoot it down. Ask questions later. But anyways, this question from the live chat goes to Riddle Me This, who says, did you and the enforcer hear that the Russian media clowns saying that they didn't take Kyiv in 3 days simply because they didn't want to?
I haven't, but the Russian media clowns, I only bring them on for entertainment reasons. They say stupid stuff daily. I wouldn't doubt it at all if they said that. In fact, I believe you when you say that, because I've seen them say even stupider things. So I wouldn't doubt it. I didn't hear it, though, physically. So with that, I hope that addresses that live chat fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Panama Floyd, and sponsoring that live chat question. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Gonzalo Guns, who says, "This is for the taco salad fund. Just a question from the chat, please." And jaga jaga. And Gonzalo, I haven't had taco salad since high school, I think, like when they served those nasty school lunches.
Ew, yeah. Some of the food here in the South is completely tarnished now because of school lunches. Like, I will tell y'all this. School lunches were okay when we first started off, and like when I first started off in first grade. When I went into second grade, school lunches became inedible here in Alabama, and it was like that for the rest of time, all the way until I graduated high school. The food was
The only thing that was tolerable was the chili Crispitos, and that was it.
And maybe the pizza, depending on what kind of pizza they cooked, like those flat pizza square things, those were kind of tolerable. But the chili Crispitos were really the only thing that were edible. Everything else was completely oh my lord!
Goodness gracious.
Mark! Oh, he's back in New Zealand. He's back.
Oh, he's gone back.
Man, Mark is a traveling fiend. I mean, like, Mark, you got to be traveling every day, because one day it's Canadian, one day it's, I think we've seen it in US a couple of times, and now it's in New Zealand dollars. Mark travels a lot. I don't know what for, but that's really crazy to think you're taking such a long flight all the way from New Zealand to the United States. It's got to be like 17 hours.
Something like that. That's a long flight. I wouldn't want to make it.
Man, I would only do that if I was flying first class or something, because that is too
I would
long.
have to have at least 2 sturgeon to take that flight.
Someone's about to go, yeah, that's an endangered fish. We're talking about the medicine. We're talking about the medicine. The British people,
I'm not talking about eating fish.
The British folks will know, but I don't think the Americans will. Here in America, I think that's called a quaalude. I'm just kidding. It's not a quaalude. What is it, Matthew? Here in America?
Oh,
a Dramamine.
A Dramamine.
Yeah,
it's definitely not a quaalude. That's something else.
Matthew was sitting there and pausing for a minute because he was getting a butt. Also, someone said we would have taken Kyiv in 3 days if we had wanted to.
Yes, please.
No, the Russian bots are coping so bad now. They're trying to rewrite history a year later, going, "Yeah, we would have done it if we wanted to." Then why didn't you? What the hell? You just want to sit around in a year for fun? Like, is this what you do in your free time? I thought y'all sat around and got drunk and died from alcohol poisoning or something instead. Come on, y'all gotta come up with better ways to have entertainment then. Like, that's sad. The Russia is such a boring place, man. They'd rather sit in a war for a year and die by the hundreds of thousands instead of actually doing anything meaningful.
Yeah, they definitely did not have the opportunity to take Kyiv if they wanted to, because surely, why would they not take Kyiv as the capital?
Yeah,
I mean that's just this is like one of these stupid statements. Why would you make a tactical decision not to take Kyiv if you could? And also either way you look at that question, both answers are stupid that they're trying to go with.
I just, there's really no point even talking about it. It's just that it baffles me, the stupidity of people like that. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's like, why wouldn't they have taken it? If they could have, why wouldn't they? That would have ended the war right there.
This tells you how easily most Russians apparently take propaganda, because if that works with the population, that's very sad. Now, I know there are some Russians in Russia that don't support the war, but overall it seems like most of them take it and run with it.
Man, I gotta tell you, and what's kind of sad to me is that there's a small group of people out there who actually believe these kinds of stories and actually say, "Oh, the Russians could have done it if they wanted to." And it's like, this isn't like stupid make-believe world. This is the real world. You want to end wars as quick as possible. If they had taken Kyiv, the war would have practically been over immediately. So why the hell wouldn't they? People don't sit around and economically destroy their country through crippling sanctions and going into a war economy for a whole year for the hell of it. That's just stupid. I can't stand when people sit here with these stupid kinds of fanciful ideas, and they sit there and act like they're realistically adding something meaningful to a conversation. It's the dumbest thing ever, and people do that on everything nowadays. It is the most annoying thing. I think I honestly think that there's a bit of an issue sometimes in the modern world where we make people feel like their opinions are always incredibly valued, and then they come out and say the stupidest takes because they think they're actually worth something, and they're not based in any logic, any basis, any merit, anything. Like I sit there and I'll say something on stream, and then I'll back it up with a historical precedent, like this happened in such and such war, so it'll probably happen here. Some people will just go, Putin's going to fly in on a unicorn, and he's going to laser zap Zelenskyy and win the war tomorrow. And it's like, well, are you out of your mind? Like, we're not going to rant about this too long, but that kind of stuff, it's like, what the hell is wrong with some people? Like, it's not a lot, but it's some people. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next, but I think he wants to give us support, and I hope we address that fairly well.
All right. And up next, we have to address that $311 super chat from Mark, Slava Ukraine, who's back in New Zealand again, or at least maybe that's what his VPN is saying. I'm not really sure, but Mark, let us know if it's not an OPSEC issue. And he says, sorry, time zones, among other things, et al.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Mark, and it's great to have you on, and I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because your support does help us to keep this thing rolling. And while we're not running a Sunday fundraiser today, and it's just a normal stream because the fundraiser was run on Friday, I've got to thank you so much for helping us to keep this thing running even now, because it, of course, helps us to keep this thing rolling in the background. And so, thank you so much once again. Don't ever feel, whenever anyone says sorry when they're sending a super chat, like, sorry, I sent this in late, don't ever feel sorry. I don't want anyone to ever feel sorry, because y'all support is entirely voluntary. I never want anyone to feel like they're being forced to support us. I never want anyone to feel like we're like trying to bring y'all out to support. We never ask for support. We thank everyone who supports us, and it's incredibly crucial to keeping this channel running because this is our job, but we never stoop down to the level of begging y'all to support us because it's y'all's option. And I'm not going to make y'all uncomfortable by asking for y'all's support through the stream like we're some kind of beggars or something like that, because it's the news. Y'all are here for the news. And if y'all enjoy it, y'all can support it. If not, just... oh, by the way, Matthew, I'm hearing like a loud reverb.
Hold on just a second. My headphones have disconnected.
Oh, okay. I knew it. I knew it this time. I wasn't just hearing it. Oh,
we're fixed.
Hey!
Or it's fixed.
Well, that's good to hear. And also, I got to thank you so much once again. And I hope we've addressed that fairly well. Never feel sorry for sending in support late or not sending in support at all. I'm just happy to know that everyone's watching and enjoying the news. And so with that, thank you so much once again. But yeah, once again, being in New Zealand, that is a big time zone thing. I think that would be early morning for y'all over there. Well, let me think. No, I think it would be like midday, maybe? I don't know. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Mark. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, thank you, Mark, for the Gulf Stream. I heard you sending it down. I'll be sure to go sit in it. I can't afford the fuel, but it'll be nice to at least sit in a plush seat. Thank you for that Gulf Stream. Did you hear that? He's donating the Gulf Stream.
The Gulf Stream? What Gulf Stream?
He said you already donated the Gulf Stream to me.
What, you a private jet?
Yeah.
Do you know how much that's going to cost?
We can go sit in it.
Well, yeah, but we can't even run it. Like, we can't even run it for an hour. We'd be broke. I mean, like, if you did have a Gulf Stream...
I played Flight Simulator for a long time. I might be able to fly it, maybe.
Yeah, man, you're going to have the freaking NTSB crawling up and down on us along with the FAA. They're going to be all over us. We're going to be in prison for you trying to fly a Gulfstream. No. I thank you, though, Mark, for donating a Gulfstream. But we are going to... I was about to say put that to charity. How the hell would we put a Gulfstream in a charity, you know?
Does Zelenskyy have a private jet yet?
I don't know. I think they have a state jet for the nation that they use for, like, foreign visits and stuff like that.
I say it's about time he has a private jet if he doesn't have one. He needs a nice, comfy seat after this war.
You know what? Now I see where you're going with that, Matthew. I see where you're going with that. We'll donate that jet to Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Mark. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to BC Skyman, who puts in a 20, and he wants a question from the chat. And he says, awesome fundraiser last Friday in Slava, Ukraine.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying that fundraiser. We put in a load of effort trying to make that thing pull off without a hitch successfully. And luckily enough, it seems as though a load of y'all enjoyed it. And let me actually go and look at something real quick to figure. Oh, look, we finally reached 114,000 subscribers tonight.
Hey.
Hey!
Nice.
Hey! Nice. So let's see here. Let me go to Content A. Let me go to Live A. 1 year of victory. Wow, that had a 98.6% like rate. 6,662 likes and 93 dislikes. Could we have a couple of people hit the like button on that video to round that up, because I don't like that number, but still, that was a lot of likes. 98.6% like rate. One of the highest like rates we've gotten on our streams in a while, actually. Well, actually, now I'm going back and looking at them. That's actually kind of normal now over the past few weeks, but still, not that bad. And I got to thank y'all for enjoying it that much. And so with that, we're now on to the next one. And, well, actually, we're going to get that live chat for BC Skyman, but thank you so much once again, BC, for supporting this channel, helping it to keep on running, and enjoying that podcast, because we're glad that it was received incredibly well.
All right. Yes, indeed. And the live chat question, sponsored by BC Skyman, goes to David Myers, who says, I've seen the Ukrainian troops training with flamethrowers. I thought they were banned by the Geneva Convention. And, but Enforcer, before you answer that question, I don't know if they're banned in war. I think they are, but you can actually buy one right down the street from us somewhere around Birmingham. Flamethrowers are readily available in the U.S., if y'all didn't know that.
There's actually no restrictions on buying a flamethrower either, so you could actually be a felon and own one of those, which is,
yeah.
I honestly got to say, that really makes no sense at all when you think about it, because I feel like you could do a lot more damage with a flamethrower in most scenarios than anything else. You know, we won't go into the exact details because I'm not sure if YouTube would like us going through what kind of destruction a flamethrower could entail. But moving on from that, I would have to say, in regards to that question, I've not seen the Ukrainians training with flamethrowers. I haven't seen that video. So unfortunately, I have to declare ignorance on giving an answer to that one, because if I haven't seen it and I've never seen that, there's really no way for me to talk about that, because I don't know if it did or didn't happen. So with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support, BC Skyman, and sponsoring that live chat.
Yes, indeed. And, excuse me, also I saw some folks saying these flamethrowers are used for clearing brush. And no, I'm talking about the flamethrowers that shoot a 30-foot stream of fuel. These are legitimate flamethrowers I'm talking about.
No,
there's also those brush little like torches that you can use, but that's a different thing.
You can go and get an M1 flamethrower if you can find one, and you can buy it without any restrictions whatsoever. So it is a thing. If you look at it and you look at the laws, there's nothing stopping you from getting a military grade flamethrower and doing whatever you want with it. There's no restrictions on it whatsoever, which is just bizarre. I feel like, honestly, that should be like a tax stamp kind of thing, you know, to have a thing like that.
Oh no, I'm not in favor of the NFA whatsoever.
Well, yeah, I'm saying though, when you think about what's already tax stamped, you know, in that perspective, how the hell did the flamethrower not get tax stamped? Because I feel like that's something that would have been in the category of machine gun, but for some reason everyone just went, you need a background check for this thing. Just buy one. It's that just seems kind of stupid that for some reason the laws were passed. And they were always talking about these dangerous M240 machine guns and stuff like that that you could get in the 80s, but then they never talked about the flamethrowers that could shoot flames 30 meters, and you could burn down practically any building or do things that I would say are far more destructive than you could do with a machine gun. So, from that perspective, it's weird. But we won't go much further than that. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Santiago Flores, who puts in a 20 and says, good evening, guys. Great Friday fundraiser. This is for the Whatever Needed Fund. Building right now my M142 HIMARS model. Cheers. Santiago, please, on Discord, send me a picture of that, because I love models and I'd love to see that as well. And thank you for the support.
And thank you for the support. And I hope that we get to see that little somewhere. And thank you so much once again for enjoying that little Friday fundraiser. It was just a little one. It was only $64,283. It's not like it was a big one or anything. And I'm just kidding. It was massive. And I got to thank everyone who was involved in that. And I'm glad that you enjoyed it as well. And so thank you so much once again. I can't wait to see that model when it's done. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a super chat from Psyops, which he warned me ahead of time was very questionable. So I'm sending it to review.
And let's see. We will check it out. Check that thing out. Oh, we cannot read that one. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops, and helping us to keep this thing running. But I have to say, that's probably the worst one I've read yet. So we can't even read any of it. But still, thank you for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. But that right there was scary. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right. And I see some folks saying do it. I see some folks saying PG, Matt. PG.
No, we can't.
I see some folks saying lo. But anyways, Psyops, thank you for the support as always. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Randy Wiedenfeld, who says, what are your thoughts on the Russian launching on NASA Crew 6 flight in a couple of hours while the war is still going on?
Really? Let's see. NASA Crew 6. The Crew 6 mission. It's a SpaceX launch, so it's using the Falcon, I'm assuming. Let's see here. It will carry 2 NASA astronauts, along with a UAE astronaut and a Roscosmos cosmonaut, Andrei Fedyaev. Interesting.
I thought, wait a minute, is this going to the space station?
It is. It's going to the ISS.
I thought the folks were stuck and they weren't planning to come down for like a year or something.
That's a good question.
I guess all that just went away. I don't know what to believe anymore out of the news. Like, it seems like they say stuff, then it turns around and it's like something completely opposite.
Yeah, that's why I don't get my news from Fox or CNN or anyone, because they just say crap to get a rise out of people. Like, you know, like what's a news article recently that came out that would be something crazy?
I got some political examples, but I'll just skip those.
We can't cover those. I'm trying to think
yeah.
I'm trying to think of one that's non-political, and I can't because they're literally just running political stuff nonstop nowadays. But yeah, I didn't know that was happening. I don't really know what to make of that. I feel like we should not be ferrying Russian astronauts up to ISS unless if the Russian government pays a premium for that astronaut to be in that seat on that rocket. But I don't know. I don't know all the details behind this. I don't know what the dealings were behind the scenes as to why this astronaut, this cosmonaut is on this rocket. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to hold my comment on this one. But thank you for bringing this up. I didn't even know that this was happening, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, with that, we are on to the next one. But yeah, the news, once again, you know, I love how the news works these days, Matthew, because back in the day, the news actually would wrap up a story, like, you know, something would happen, and then they would go, in the future, this decision has actually been reversed or removed. Now the news just lets you get the zinger, you know, like, boom, something wild's happened, something crazy, look, and then they never tell you what happened to that story.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interference. Like, I don't want to go into conspiracy theories, but there's a lot of interference with our news that we just simply aren't privy to, which is sad because you'd think we have a free press, but we really don't.
Oh, well, with that, we're on to the next one.
Oh, that's scary. But anyways, our next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a 20 and says, check out the RFE film about the Ukrainians bombing the dam in Bakhmut. You both rock, and so does the LSA. And thank you, Marion.
And thank you so much for the support. I still have not been able to find any videos about the dam being blown in Bakhmut, sadly. I can't really even see a dam that would be around Bakhmut, for that matter. So unfortunately, I don't really have a lot to add to that right now, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance because I still haven't found this dam that's been blown up and what's been caused because of it. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Rotormax, who says some extra coffee money and Slavo Ukraine.
And thank you so much once again for the support in helping us with the coffee fund, because the coffee is incredibly important and helps us to keep on drinking the coffee and keeping up when otherwise we would be sleep. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from CK Bold, who says Slava Ukraine and take a live chat question.
And thank you so much once again for the support. Slava Ukraini. And we will make sure to take a live chat question. And so with that, what do we got?
And this one goes to Texas T, who says, did you guys see Zelenskyy give a tour of his bunker with a single bed and closet today?
I did. I didn't include it because I didn't really know how much time we would have to cover the news, and we actually started running out of time and going overtime for our news segment tonight. So I didn't include it, but I did see it, and it was really, really Spartan living conditions, actually. It was much more Spartan than I thought it would be. So with that, I thank you so much for the question. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Lokikis, who puts in the 10 and says, hello, enforcers. Have you seen the clip from Klitschko having a ride on a Leopard 2? And also, this is my first super chat ever. And puts in a Ukrainian flag and a German flag.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and also being a Lee Spring Army viewer from Germany. I did see Klitschko riding in that Leopard 2. Well, but I didn't include it because the day we covered the Leopard 2 news, it was actually the day of the fundraiser. It was in the news to be covered that night. You can see the link for it right there. But we never got to showing it. But I did watch it before the fundraiser ran that night. So yes, I did see it. So with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Craig Platel, who puts in a 10 and says the 4,000 number of trucks are from the 10 material technical support brigades, 400 trucks each. There are lots of trucks in other units. Also, list of destroyed vehicles include Scooby-Doo vans, etc.
like Zoink Scoob? Wait, hang on. Russian Scooby-Doo van. I gotta get to that meme again, Matthew. There it was. I saw it for a second. Where the hell did it go? Aw, man, one second, let me back out. Like, Zoink Scoob! This doesn't feel like a military exercise! There's some boblets! Just gets blown up.
Oh boy.
I guess that joke didn't land too well, but anyways.
I don't support defamation against Scooby-Doo.
Oh, okay, all right. We're getting a little.
That's a joke, by the way. Don't take it to heart.
All right. But still, thank you so much for the support. Also, that is something that we did cover in the loss report earlier, that it does include civilian vehicles, such things like that, and the Scooby-Doo van. I didn't say the Scooby-Doo van specifically, but I did say it includes all random kinds of vehicles that the Russians are using for supply. And you are correct. Beyond those, I guess you could say, logistics units, there are more trucks in every BTG. It's just that those trucks' inherent purpose isn't for supply. But at the same time, it looks like they're probably having to start using them for that, considering that they've lost so many trucks. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from JD Mako23, who says, fellas, did you see Knucklehead Ramzan Kadyrov created a new medal? It's called the, Hero of Chechnya, and probably awarded it to himself. Lols.
Let's see. The Hero of Chechnya medal. Let's see here. It literally says right here, Chechen leader awards himself Hero of Chechnya medal. And this was on the 24th of February, 2023. Hey, I'm a piece of crap, Don. Let's see. Hero of Chechnya medal. The medal presented to Kadyrov on February 24th was established by Kadyrov in October to award Chechens who take part in Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. The decree signed by Kadyrov says the decision on who deserves the medal is to be made by the head of the region, which is him. Earlier this month, amendments were introduced to the constitution under the Chechen leader's official title was changed to Father of the People. Wow, what a piece of crap. You know, I think it's stupid when you come up with medals and awards and you start giving the medals and awards you made to yourself, because that's more so to recognize the people who follow you and support you, not more so to try and make yourself look better. That's just stupid. And it's funny that he already awarded... Hmm?
Go ahead.
And it's funny to think that he's already awarded himself one of those. But what say you, Matthew?
I wonder what was on the medal. Was it like a symbol of like a ham and cheese sandwich with a fork and knife?
Nah, man, it was a goat. There's a little imprint of a goat on it.
Oh, Donna, we keep our most precious and loved the closest to us on the medal, Donna.
But with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Victor Luna, who puts in a 5 and says, Matt and Enforcer, tomorrow will be my February 27th first anniversary listening to you, and Slava Ukraine.
Hey, and happy anniversary listening to us. Funnily enough, back then, you could have watched us for the first time ever on a Monday, because for about the first month and a half of the war, we ran 7 days a week nonstop. So I hope you celebrate that by going back and watching the stream that you watched initially. I'm not saying that like a requirement or anything. Actually, that would be a little bit long and arduous to watch that over again. But still, happy anniversary tomorrow to watching us for an entire year. And I hope it's been a good one for you, and I hope that you've enjoyed watching this channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and happy anniversary to being a member of the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And John in New Hampshire asks in the chat, was Kadyrov even in combat?
No, not really. He was there in northern Kyiv, but he never got close to the front lines from what we understood. He was at least 10 miles away at the minimum at all times. So with that, I hope that addresses that.
But look, Kadyrov has put a whooping on that ham and cheese sandwich stuff.
Man,
yeah.
dude, he can murder a ham and cheese sandwich like Steven Seagal can act. Like, he is going off on those sandwiches, man. So with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who puts in a 5 and says, befriended a Russian civilian today by talking about games after a big argument. When he saw me as just a guy, he calmed down and we played SWBF2 lols.
And I thank you so much for the support. Pretty interesting here that you calmed a Russian down. That's usually very hard to do, considering that I believe it was a Brazilian woman got assaulted today by Russian embassy staff outside of the embassy, and then the guy who assaulted the woman got arrested by the Brazilian police literally seconds later because of that. But moving on from that, very interesting here that you were able to calm a Russian down and play a game with him. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And real quick, I saw Paul McDonald say, isn't Kadyrov a Muslim?
Yes, he is. He's a Muslim.
Well, I guess he wouldn't be eating ham and cheese sandwiches.
But he looks like he smells like one.
Oh my goodness.
We've been saying that joke the entire war. We've been saying that joke the entire war and didn't make the connection yet. Well, he's still eating ham and cheese. That actually adds insult to injury, especially for him. And I don't know if he watches the channel ever, but yes, he does eat ham and cheese sandwiches. Right now, we're making Kadyrov cry in his presidential palace. He's going, oh, they're bullying me. They say I eat ham. But anyways,
he's right now thinking, if they were near me, I would drag them on TV and humiliate him so bad.
Done. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Loren Notsky, who puts in a 5 and says, question is, with Russia getting more involved with Russian weapons, at what point does Israel give Putin the middle finger and send the Iron Dome?
I don't know. I really have no idea, because Israel has supported the Ukrainians a little bit, and then they don't, and then they do, and then they don't, and then they say they will, and then they don't. I don't really know what's going on with the Israelis. I feel like, honestly, people ought to be giving them a little bit more flack, because they are worse than the Germans in saying that they're going to do something and then never doing it, ever. Like, the only thing we've seen come from Israel are a very small amount of armored cars, and that's it. We've never seen anything else given by the Israelis that was sizable or of note, rather than the armored cars. So I have absolutely no idea what the Israelis will be doing going into the future, and if they'll ever support Ukraine, because they haven't yet. And every time they say they do do, they don't. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Alexis Corrales, who says, "Keep it up, guys, and greetings from a great little country in Latin America called Uruguay."
Hey, thank you so much for the support. And Elite Spring Army viewer all the way from Uruguay. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Uruguay.
I'm sorry if I butchered that, though. But let's drop down in the capital of Montevideo. I believe this is the capital. And we'll drop by the Mercado Agricola de Montevideo.
Hey. It's not a supermercado, but it works.
So let's see. Let's drop down. Interesting. Let's go to another part of the city. Over here. Let's drop down right over here. Oh, wow, this is pretty nice. Oh, yeah, this is really nice. I think this is near the football stadium, I believe. It's very nice, I gotta say. It's so with that. Wait a minute, is that a Trabant?
That might be. Hello?
Wait, hang on.
Oh. Meet.
It's a Lada.
Oh, damn.
Okay, it's not a Trabant, it's a Lada, but or it's a Fiat, one or the other, because that's a licensed copy of the Fiat. But anyways, really cool to hear of a Lee Spring Army viewer all the way from Uruguay. We actually had a Lee Spring Army viewer from Chile the other day, and he was telling us about Pucón, which we have never gotten out of our heads.
Pucón.
Like Pucón was nice. Let's check out Villarica, which is on the other side of this lake. Does it look nice too? Dude, they got like a whole pirate ship. They got 2 of them. And wow, look at that.
That's very nice. That's like that place where that guy on that Pixar movie put his house and then he took the balloons and, floated away.
Yeah. You mean Up?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was trying. Up.
Dude, look at
Oh,
this.
wow. That
Wow.
looks like a nice mountain.
What about out here, like San Jose de Marquina? So this is what I would say. Oddly enough, Matthew, this just kind of looks like a normal town in Alabama.
It really does. It does. I see the Coca-Cola sponsored sign over there. Very reminiscent of southern towns.
Yes, very, very too reminiscent. It's either Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola on something inside of a town, and then you know what gang they're aligned with. It's either the Crips or the Bloods, and it's with Coca-Cola or Pepsi. But I was just thinking about wearing Compton. You know that video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I'm here walking with them.
We're in Compton and we're walking with the Crips. Oh man, let's check out this area right here. I gotta say, Chile is wildly nice, like way nicer than I ever thought it would be.
It really is very nice.
Look, they even have the submarine here in the middle, and there's like sea lions on it. Let's go check out Uruguay and see what it looks like, because Chile was a really big surprise. What does, let's say, like La Paloma look like? Oh, this doesn't look that bad either. Look, they even got like a whole dinosaur out here.
Oh, and just a generic casino over there.
The casino. Where do you go to gamble? The casino. But let's see here. Christ the Redeemer. Really neat, really neat. They got a huge lighthouse in this town, and that's their whole marketing premise is in La Paloma is the lighthouse. But let's go down to another town like Fargo de Jose Ignacio, and let's see what it looks like. It's got another lighthouse. An abandoned building that someone took a picture of. Neat. What else? Some really nice houses, actually. Why in the world does this look like New England?
Why does it look like, wait a minute, is that dirt on top of that house?
I think it's like a flower bed and stuff up there.
Must be a sturdy house.
Oh, look, there's another picture of that house.
I wonder what happens when it gets wet.
I don't know. Also, Paula McDonald said Uruguay. Or Uruguay, I think. Let me hang on. Spanish pronunciation of
Uruguay.
What the hell?
Uruguay. Okay, so it's Uruguay. Okay. The Spanish one, that one was so bad I couldn't understand it. It went, Uruguay. I was like, nah, that's not it. I took Spanish, and that's not it. I don't remember much Spanish now, but... Oh, wait a minute. El Mercadito.
Translating roughly to fresh market.
It's the fresh market. But anyways, I gotta say, Uruguay is not that bad looking. Got some really nice places out there. And also Chile is too. I'm really surprised with how nice South America it looks, because the countries further north, like Venezuela and Colombia, give the rest of South America, at least in America, a really bad rap. But Chile and Uruguay look incredibly nice. And so thank you so much once again for the support, all the way from Uruguay. And, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. If I'm butchering it, I'm sorry. But anyways, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from John Webster, who says, is it true that the Ukrainian military thwarted a false flag operation by Russians wearing Ukrainian uniforms heading to Belarus? They noticed the Ukrainian flag patches were upside down, then whacked them.
I haven't heard about that. I haven't seen any video or picture evidence to back that up either, so I don't really know if that is true or not, but I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, but sadly I have to declare ignorance on that due to a lack of picture or video evidence. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And the next one goes to AJS9437, who puts in a 5 and says, Enforcer Matt, will the lack of air superiority affect the ability of NATO tanks? Igor, shirt, ship, date. And USS Nevada in War Thunder, question mark?
Yes, the USS Nevada, that threw me off. I didn't expect a War Thunder question. The USS Nevada will be coming to War Thunder. It's here right now, actually, in the dev server. So there's a picture of it already in, like, an update thing. Pretty neat. I'm not really a big fan of ships in War Thunder, though. I'm more of an aircraft tank guy and helicopter guy. But the ships are cool. I'm into ships. It's just that for some reason I'm not into naval combat. Like, I'm into, like, ocean liners, commercial shipping, merchant shipping, stuff like that. For some reason, I just can't really get into older combat ships, like battleships, cruisers, destroyers, stuff like that. I can get into the modern ones, though. I think the modern ones are neat. But, the USS Nevada, I mean, you know, it's cool, but, you know, I'm not really, like, chuffed, you know, to see it. But anyways, moving on from that, to address the rest of your question, can you reread everything before the War Thunder question?
Will the lack of air superiority excuse me.
Tuberculosis.
Will the lack of air superiority affect the ability of NATO tanks?
It will not affect NATO tanks because the Ukrainians and the Russians lack air superiority due to incredibly strong air defenses. So it's not like they're going to be picked off from the air because Russian aircraft can't even operate in the sky. Rarely ever can Ukrainian aircraft also operate in the sky as well. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. And was there another part to that, Matthew?
He says Igor shirt ship date. And AJ, if you're talking about the Igor shirt that we ran a while back, that thing should have definitely shipped already. So if it hasn't, please send me a message on Discord so we can get that tended to.
Yes, because if anyone ever runs into a problem getting our merch and it doesn't ship in a reasonable time, like say like a week or 2 weeks, make sure to reach out to Matthew or me so that way we can start solving that problem and seeing why that has not shipped out yet. So I thank you for the support. Reach out to us if you have had a problem with that, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Alex Kopchuk, who puts in a 5 and says, cheers from Halifax, Canada. Check out the Halifax Citadel, York Redoubt, or Fortress of Louisbourg, if you like old school cannons and forts.
Well, I have to thank you so much for the support. I have to find Halifax. I used to remember where Halifax was. Where the hell is Halifax? What? What happened? Oh, hang on. Let me go type it in. Halifax. Damn it. I should know where this is. Oh! Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's in Nova Scotia. I'm stupid like that. You know why I went, oh, Matthew? Because this whole entire town was wiped off the face of the earth in the middle of the First World War from the Halifax explosion, from a ship called the Mont Blanc that got hit by another one. It caught on fire and it was carrying nothing but ammunition, and it exploded and it literally leveled all of Halifax pretty much.
Huh.
Man, they sound like a villager from Minecraft. He went, huh. I was like, all right. But let's see. So what was he wanting us to look at here in Halifax?
The Citadel.
The Halifax Citadel. There it is. It is the Citadel with a cannon.
Oh, cannon.
Dude, that cannon's got like that Russian mount, you know, it's like welded together with some TIG welds. They're like hoping that it holds together. This one though, the Armstrong gun, that thing's a little beefier. And when you see this
Look
guy,
at these kids playing around this. This is dangerous.
this is dangerous. That thing could go off any moment now. We can actually see a Highlander here. Nice, solid. Ambulance, a Ford ambulance, probably from the era of the First World War-ish. And that's probably not a real one either because it looks like it's more of like a Ford pickup that they kind of rigged up to make it look like an ambulance. We can see some bagpipers here. I've done that before. Let's see. There's the Citadel. It's literally just called the Citadel. Pretty cool.
That's a trading house, too, if you're into the stock market.
Another Highlander. And also cool to hear that, Matthew. Very cool. We can see the provisions. And probably the powder, more so. Let's see, what else? Wow, they really keep this one up nice. Like, the Canadians must be putting a lot of money into maintaining this fort because it is in great condition compared to most forts in Alabama. But then again, it's Alabama, so what do you expect? But anyways, and I'm not trashing on Alabama, I'm just saying we could put more money into the forts is all. We can see them operating a cannon there. Really nice.
That's a neat building over there in the distance.
And look, they set up like a D-Day thing here, I guess.
Mining.
Auction mining. But they're pretty cool overall. I like this. Pretty neat, pretty solid. I gotta say, look, people are even getting married here. Look at that. This guy's got a fade like no tomorrow. He's even got those curls. Man, that guy's got to be a TikTok influencer with a haircut like that.
For some reason, my brain interpreted that as you saying the guy was trying to catch a fade. I was thinking, why? I was like, what happened?
Man, he's finna catch these hands. But let's see. Let's zoom back out on Halifax. Let's look at just some random pictures of the town. That one's a nice one. This one's a nice one. That one's a nice one. Oh, look, a rail yard. Oh, look. I don't know what that is. Maybe a college? Let's see here. Oh, look. Hogwarts. I'm just kidding. That's not Hogwarts. Let's see. Moving on. It looks like a nice town, honestly. It looks like it got rebuilt really nicely after the Halifax explosion. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support, being all the way from Halifax in Nova Scotia in Canada. And also thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, I hope I've addressed that fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Richard Plants, who says, thank you for the real news, future president.
And thank you for supporting us. That way you can keep covering the news, future voter. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And next up, Trister puts in a 5 and says, Mr. Corgi and Shiba.
Mr. Corgi and Shiba.
They're kind of like
Mitsubishi.
I say that so I don't wake him up.
they're going to be out there barking in a second. Woo, woo. Mr. Corgi likes to talk. But still, thank you for the support. I absolutely love my puppies. I think they're the most precious things on earth. And I love them to bits. To bits, I tell you. To bits. And also, yes, Richard Plants, it is a delay. There's about a 30-second delay. And that's why it doesn't seem like we're responding to the live chat in real time. It's 30 seconds after y'all say something for the most part. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you for the support. And thank you for giving a shout out to our absolutely favorite baby puppies. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from John Zedrin, who says, to the LSA Fund, free question from the chat, and Slava Ukraine to all of you, Ukrainian flag, and he puts in the Swedish flag.
And thank you so much for the support from one of our Swedish viewers in the Lee Spring Army. And thank you for giving the best wishes to all of the Lee Spring Army, and also to this channel. And thank you for the support as well. And so with that, let's get that live chat, Matthew.
And this live chat question goes to Tiger, who says, did y'all see your favorite Russian media guy kick someone off his show today?
I didn't. I wish I had known about that. I would have shown it. But I didn't watch this little show today because I can only do that like every once in a while because he grates my nerves a lot. And he also says the dumbest things. But still, thank you for bringing that up. I didn't see him kick someone off, but I'll have to make sure to go back and try and watch that sometime around. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support in sponsoring that live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Landlubber, who puts in a 3 and says, Attackham's F-16s.
Attackham's F-16s. Is he saying combine the wings and stuff of an F-16 with the body of an Attackham's?
It's very cryptic. He just says Attackham's F-16s.
I'll agree. This one's. I'm just kidding. I'll back that up. I'll agree with it. So with that, thank you so much for the support, F-16 Attackham's. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $3 super chat from Paul Benz, who says, who can we seek as common cool heads, if not Russia, among the non-Western nation allied nations, so that we can have a better chance to avoid World War III? IYO.
Do you know what that means?
In your opinion.
I don't think that answers the question, Mr. Senator. Do you know what that
He
means?
said IYO, meaning in your opinion. You mean the whole thing?
Yes, like, where are you getting from that?
Oh.
For some reason, I'm not really understanding it.
We'll see. Who can we see? Among non-Western, so bad. He's saying that Russia is obviously not a cool head, meaning not a stable or rational country because they've invaded a sovereign country. And who else, rather than non-Western nations, can we turn to for a temporary partnership with to try to make peace and avoid World War III?
That is a good question. We really can't turn to anyone. You would have to negotiate with the Russians to make sure that there isn't a third world war. Because if you negotiate with anyone else, like the Chinese, you're just trying to grow an alliance or a coalition against the Russians, and it doesn't deal with the underlying issue. And so you would have to end up dealing with the Russians to ensure that the Third World War doesn't begin and then end. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. Thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dupper Bob, who puts in a $2 donation and says, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraini. And thank you once again, Dupper Bob, for the continuous support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Anaru Bell, who says, "'Tis evening in New Zealand, 1820.
And it is evening, indeed, in New Zealand. Let's go look at Auckland, which is a big town, a big city. You know, there's a lot of ferries in Auckland. A lot of them, goodness.
Isn't this where this guy, this Kim.com fellow lived in Auckland?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the guy you're talking about, so I wouldn't know. But really nice town. Uh-oh. The Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation.
Oh.
Jeepers.
Bing shaling.
Jeepers. That's a little scary. Well, let's see what else we got. Not a bad town, though. It looks really nice.
It's pretty nice. Yellow buses. Nice.
Why in the world does this look like a little model diorama?
Yeah, it doesn't look real, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't look real. It looks like paper mache. I'm just kidding, paper mache. You know, I got you.
Yeah.
And look at this! Look at this cruise ship. It's got a spoiler on it.
Hey, that thing's sporty. It's got to have the aerodynamics. You know, it goes at least 200 miles an hour on the water.
It's one of those hydroplane things, but it's a whole cruise ship.
The thing that starts like the front of the boat goes straight up in the air.
Maybe. I would be
Walter Ellicott is like sitting there like going off right now behind the screen. No.
He's like, no, they can't. But I like this town. I like the city. It's really nice.
Is that desert over there on the left?
Is that the ancient city of Sumer? Like, I don't know. Dude, this does not look like New Zealand. This looks like Egypt. This looks like the Nile River.
It could be.
I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, the Nile River is small.
I want to get in that swimming pool next to the water.
Yeah, I want to get in there. I don't want to get in the Nile River because there are gators in the Nile River, and I'm scared of gators. I don't like them, and I don't think anyone should not be scared of gators. I think everyone should be afraid of gators at any given moment. But moving on from that picture of the Nile, Auckland's really nice. I don't know where all of our Australian viewers live across New Zealand, but that is a nice city. I'll say, I'll give it that. What about Wellington, Matthew? Beef Wellington. Not that bad. Not that bad. Nice blue water. Looks really nice.
Blue water. Not polluted, at least for now.
Or it's got like that dangerous limestone stuff in it that's toxic and it'll kill you within months, but it's blue, so it looks nice.
Kiwi something.
Kiwi rail. Kiwi rail. But interesting nonetheless. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for allowing us to know what time zone it actually is in New Zealand. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, "Read PsyOps super chat, you coward."
We can't. I thank you for the support. We can't, because if we do, YouTube will come down and get us. And also, it's not PG. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, E.
And guess what? We're moving on to our live chat questions. Thank you once again to everyone who put in a super chat to support the channel, and we appreciate you all very much. And also, thank you to everyone else who put a like on the video and the stream. And we also appreciate you very much. And if you didn't do either, we still appreciate you anyway. So thank you very much. So we're moving on to our Morse code decoders of the stream. We have JP's RCs, Rumpelstiltskin, CFA, Mark Hodges, Cliff Simonson, and also Orion 1820. They said the Morse code message tonight says, if a Russian dies and no one sees, is he sleeping instead?
He is. And what's the answer to that question, Matthew?
We may never know.
That is right. And so I thank y'all for deciphering that Morse code message. Y'all did get the message correct tonight. And then also I have to address SP detectors because he's saying, no gators in the Nile River! So, yeah, you're right. They're crocodiles.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry. I got that wrong. They are crocodiles. But, you know, still, it's some kind of reptilian creature with a large mouth, kind of like me. And so it's scary to me. I'm very scared of competition. So with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. I hope we corrected that because it is crocodiles, not gators. But y'all did get the Morse code message correct as well. And thank y'all for continuously deciphering that Morse code message day in and day out, even after it was supposed to be discontinued. We're still here and we're still doing it. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank y'all once again for doing that.
All right, and up next, and also RIP headphone users, like said the Observer, and I very much agree with that. But anyways, up next, we have a question from Kai's Red House, who says, do you think the Belarus attacks are a false flag?
I don't think the Belarus attacks are a false flag. From what we know, the AWACS was destroyed by partisans. So, you know, that's not really directly related to Ukraine. That's just individuals doing their thing. So I would say that's not going to be leading up to an attack anytime soon, because I also haven't heard of any attacks beyond that one. So with that, I hope that answers that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mad Machine, who says, any update on the Bradleys? And also, happy birthday again.
And happy birthday again. And to answer that question, we have not gotten any updates on the Bradleys since we saw them moving towards the Ukrainian border. We have not seen them in Ukraine yet, and we haven't heard anything else about them. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to TM, who says, how many Russian ammo caches has Ukraine destroyed this year?
we don't have an exact, we never get an exact number on that. We don't even know what it was last year. So unfortunately, I have to declare ignorance on that one because I don't think there's ever been an exact count made of how many ammo dumps have been destroyed. So with that, we are on to the next one. And I hope that does address that fairly well. Also, I'm sorry to everyone who has lost their hearing. I promise you it will come back or you'll end up like me, partially deaf. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Danny Coco, who says Iraq cost the U.S. $300 million daily, and why the reluctance to help Ukraine.
That is true. The Iraq and Afghanistan cost the United States exorbitantly on a daily basis. The reason why we're seeming to not really want to help out Ukraine all too much is because they can only absorb so much equipment into their armed forces at any given time due to training restrictions, and like how many soldiers can be trained and therefore how many vehicles and equipment can they give them. So yeah, that's mostly the reason why we're not giving them a lot, because it takes a while to integrate new stuff. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Pakatang, who says, did you know the Russians tried to fake propaganda of pictures of the Leopard 2 A4 tanks destroyed in Ukraine? They got the pics from Syria. There were the Turkish ones.
Yes, I did know about that, and I think that's hilarious, because they also did that with the Abrams. As soon as the announcement was made, they said, we've already destroyed one! And it was a picture of an Abrams that had burned out in Iraq in 2003. So I was like, yeah, not really that wild to think the Russians would do something like that. And yes, I did see that, and I think it's absolutely hilarious, to be quite honest with you. And so with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
And up next, Sheriff Van says, any news about the breakthroughs in Bakhmut?
No, because there have been no breakthroughs in Bakhmut from either side right now. The front line is staying largely stagnant. So there's been no news about breakthroughs because there hasn't been a breakthrough. So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And we have another super chat. This one is from Anaru Ball once again, who puts in a 3 and says, none, very few of your Australian viewers live in New Zealand. They live in Australia.
Did I say that? Did I say Australia when I was talking about New Zealand?
I can't remember, to be honest.
I can't remember either, and if I did, I'm sorry, because I was actually supposed to be talking about New Zealanders. I'm sorry I got that mixed up. It's late. It's late. Our brains are hardly firing anymore, but we're keeping this thing going. It's reconnected. Oh my lord, that was scary. Well, yep, we're back now. So, some people say that our streams are really long. And they are. They're 3.5 hours long, and about at the point of around 12 or 12:10, Matthew and me start to lose mental capacity because we have worked ourselves into exhaustion throughout the course of the day, and then especially at this point going through the stream. So that was a mix-up on my end. Sorry about that, because I was actually supposed to mean New Zealanders. But thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, nonetheless. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from ABC, who says, Enforcer, why isn't Moldova reuniting with Romania after being occupied by Russia through Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact? Wouldn't then Moldova become automatically part of NATO?
That's a little bit more complicated than it seems, because if Moldova absorbed into Romania, all the people in charge of Moldova will lose their jobs. And that's a big deal, because that's how they make their living. That's how they make their money, and also they probably fought and clawed a lot of their lives to get the amount of power they have right now in Moldova. And so having it absorbed in Romania, who knows, the Romanians may never give control of Moldova back, they may even never give autonomy. These people are probably concerned about that, so they probably wouldn't want to get absorbed into Romania, because right now they're a sovereign state. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Pakatang once again, who says, do you feel that countries are becoming more interested in autocratic leaders, or do you feel that democracies are becoming preferred? What are the risks to democracies, and can the risks be overcome?
Let's see. Relating to a ruler who has absolute power. I had to make sure that was autocratic. I don't feel like societies are leaning towards that. I feel like societies are more so leaning towards further decentralization and democratization. For the most part, in most countries, although it does appear that it's a battle in between autocratic leaders and more democratic governance right now in most areas of the world. But I don't think this is a general trend. This is kind of like absolutism during the 17th century. While it was emerging and while it did occur, it wasn't occurring in every country, hence the English Civil War. Also, hence all of the conflicts that occurred in Germany, or the Holy Roman Empire at that time, due to that attempt at absolutism. So, with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, at least from my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And, to answer one part of Packington's question, he said, what are the risks to democracies? I think one of the main risks to real democracies like ours, I know some people are going to say ours isn't a real democracy, but it is for all intents and purposes. I would say that corporations are probably one of the biggest risks, because when you have the representation of the people through the representatives and then you have the people, if there's any interference in between those two parts, that's where democracies start having issues. So I'd say that's one main risk to it. And I think, well, I can't go there, but you'll get the point.
And so with that, I hope we answered that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, excuse me, goodness. Up next, we have a question from Gabriel Mum, who says, should these soldiers in Transnistria consider themselves blessed because they were spared from dying in Ukraine?
In a way, yeah, they kind of are blessed for that reason. So with that, I hope that does address that for a little, kind of a short answer, but yeah, I guess they would be. And with that, we're on to the next one. Before we do, try and take Alaska. That mentality drained from this, you're going to be in trouble being a lawyer. It's mostly paperwork, LOL, at the Enforcer, at Enforcer Matt. It's not that it's draining to do this, it's the time of day that this occurs at, because naturally, most people don't work, on their toes mentally this late at night for 3.5 hours straight. Like, some people are going to go, oh, there's night shifts. Yeah, there's night shifts, but usually you're not having to sit there and say things for 3.5 hours. And usually court trials and court filings aren't done this late at night. Usually that's done like in the waking day during daylight. So it's a little different there because, I'm not trying to fight exhaustion of going all day and then getting to this if I was an attorney, because that would just be done as a part of a normal day. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Try and take Alaska, good point, though. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Texan Dave, who says, why can't the U.S. and NATO give Ukraine what they need, saying they don't want to be seen as being provocative? Newsflash, the world know we were providing all kind of aid.
The reason why we aren't is because there's only so much support we can provide before the Ukrainians don't have enough soldiers to equip or operate that stuff. So that's the main reason why. So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Dakota the Bear, who says, I have a question for the segment, ? And yes, you do. Dakota says, I heard the Ukrainians are turning a sizable number of the captured T-62s into armored recovery vehicles, perhaps due to incoming new Western tanks.
Can you reread that one again?
I have heard that the Ukrainians are turning a sizable number of the captured T-62s into armored recovery vehicles, perhaps due to the incoming new Western tanks.
I haven't heard about that. That's fairly interesting. I'll try and look into some news and information to see if that is the case, because if so, that is very interesting here and probably will help them out in the long run. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And to address something real quick, Try and Take Alaska also said the USA is a constitutional republic, not a real democracy. And I'll have to disagree on that, because that's like saying that there has never been a real communist country according to the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx. There have been many communist countries. There's been Cuba, Russia, well, the Soviet Union at large, China, North Korea, Vietnam. And the way people always go around saying there's never been real communism is because Chinese communism isn't Marxist communism, it's Maoist, and the Soviet Union's communism wasn't Marxist communism, it was Leninism. And then Vietnam's communism wasn't real communism, wasn't Marxist communism, because it was, I forgot what theirs was, it was like Viet Minh or Ho Chi Minh's communism or something like that. And then, Cuban communism, they say it's different. And that's kind of splitting hairs, in my opinion, because it all falls under the umbrella of communism. It's different flavors of communism, kind of like how a constitutional republic is a democracy, but it's a different flavor of democracy. It's not the pure form of democracy that you would see in the city-state of Athens, where everyone had a vote. Well, at least every male had a vote. So I say America's a democracy. Britain kind of falls.
Of course.
Britain kind of falls under being a democracy a little, but that one is more of a constitutional monarchy, which is different. But yeah, I think the United States is a democracy. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from John in New Hampshire, who says, Enforcer, did you hear about the Russian surveillance plane being hit by drones in Belarus?
I didn't hear about it being hit by drones. I heard about it being blown up by partisans on the tarmac. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from LaRue Anthony, who says almost 50,000 casualties in 2 months, 100,000 in the first 10 months of the war. Can you believe the casualty rates? That would be like 600,000 casualties in 2023 if that rate keeps up.
That'll be quite a high number, and I don't doubt it at all. It's actually not that crazy when you see it, the losses each and every day. It becomes really believable really quickly, as opposed to the people now on Twitter that I saw the other day that are going, I don't think this war in Ukraine is real. I think the government's lying to us because where's the footage? With that,
gosh.
I hope that addresses that fairly well. We're on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from Mike Singer, who says, if China decides to lend lease, would this make Russia any more powerful on the battlefield? And is the Enforcer ever going to do the train simulator video? 1 year and still waiting. Thank you.
And thank you for the question. The train simulator video was actually rounded out. I finished out the route, and then started the stream on the war in Ukraine. But yeah, it was rounded out from what I know. But still, thank you for the question. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next question goes to Turning Off Your Gas Lights, who says, have you seen any of the Russian warship done go yourself stamp postcard sets?
Sadly, I have not. I will try and find them someday, but I haven't yet. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one. And Matthew, I have one of those Ricolas that, like, you know, the ultra red.
Deadly ones?
Yeah, the deadly Ricolas. I've been sitting here for a while, and now whenever I breathe, it feels like I'm breathing in shards of ice. It's not good. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Stony Dead Rock, who says, Matt, is there a report of losses that has happened suspiciously inside of Russian planes, men, war factories, ammo dumps, refineries, ?
Do you know what that means?
He wants to know if there's any suspicious reports of losses of Russian planes and equipment.
Not that I've heard of recently. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Pakatang once again, who says, should NATO prepare a list of sanctions on China if China decides to provide lethal aid to Russia? If so, what sanctions would hurt China and not NATO countries?
Honestly, that's one that would require a lot of thought on my end to come up with, because I could throw off some quick shot answers and they could end up hurting NATO. So, in the words of someone, Matthew, that you and me know really well, I think we're going to have to put a study group on that together and have them think about the answer, because this is something that requires a whole of body approach. So with that, I hope that I hope that gives a lack of an answer, because I wouldn't want to answer that off the bat, because it could say things that end up actually harming the West in general if we tried to sanction China, because the Chinese could fire right back if it's not done carefully. So with that, I hope that does answer the question fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and it looks like we have 2 more questions in my spreadsheet. So the next one goes to Alex for Alex, who says, question, did you hear of a dam in the north of Bakhmut being destroyed, and as a result, will slowing any ground advance from Wagner or Russia?
I have not heard about that. A lot of people have been mentioning that. A lot of people have been talking about it. I haven't heard about that yet, and I haven't seen it. So for now, I am largely without input on that, because I don't have anything to work off of. Also, let's see, is this it? Nope, that's just a marsh. I don't see anything up here to the northeast at all. Like, it's all just flat ground and, yeah, no water. So, I don't know where this thing is. I don't know what dam they blew up. Maybe it's this one. Oh, yeah, it could have been this one. There's not a lot of water there, though. But anyways, with that, I hope that answers that fairly well. And I think I'm going to only... I know this is kind of rounding out a little bit early, about 10 minutes early, but I think I'm going to answer only 2 more questions because for some reason tonight I'm not even mentally here hardly anymore. 2 more questions, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. So with that, we're on to the second to last one of the night.
And this one goes to Packeting, who says, do you feel that the Russia and Chinese threats can be removed in the next decade? Would that make the world for future generations, or would other enemies rally to oppose the U.S.?
There will always be rivalries in the world as long as other countries exist. If the Russians and the Chinese threats were eliminated, we would probably see some of the larger countries that are not really in our sphere, like India, start to attempt to become our rival. We can always mobilize threats. They'll always come back, because World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. There was never going to be a war after that. And then, as a result of us ensuring that there would never be another war, we created the next one immediately. So there will always be something coming around the corner, even if we are able to end the threats and rivals that we have now. But we still have to make it our objective to put down the rivals that we have in the present day. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And with that, we're on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is TTCMZX, who says, have you seen the Lithuanian version of the Ukrainian anthem?
I think I did, actually, and it was actually really solid. I think it was a women's choir, if I remember correctly, and they did a really good job of singing that anthem on the 24th. So if that is the one you're talking about, I did see it. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And of course, it is the end of this week of reporting. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like, make sure to comment, make sure to do everything under the sun. And of course, thank you all so much for watching tonight's stream once again. Of course, we'll be taking tomorrow off, but make sure to come back on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, because we'll be covering the next 48 hours of the war in Ukraine then, and then continuing on our normal news coverage all the way until the end of next week on Sunday. We run this stream every single day of the week, 6 days a week, except for Mondays, and I hope to see you all on Tuesday. And so with that, good night, take care, good luck, and of course, Slava Ukraini!
And Slava Ukraine. Hear Slava.
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, Бог.